All right, we start with the NFL. The Las Vegas Raiders have fired head coach Antonio Pierce after one season, but they will retain GM Tom Telesco. Tom Brady expected to be a part of the head coaching interviews. The Miami Dolphins GM Chris Greer says that Tyreek Hill did not request a trade during his exit interview. And Vikings defensive coordinator Brian Flores says he will take every interview request. NFL wildcard weekend starts with the Chargers and Texans from Houston. Kickoff Saturday, 1:30 on CBS. LA favored by 3. Trailblazers dropped a close one last night in Detroit. Ant scored a game-high 36. Trailblazers dished out 32 assists. Portland will continue their 5-game road trip tomorrow in New Orleans against the Pelicans. Tip at 5. Chris Burkhardt with Blazers Game Day at 3 on your home of the Blazers, 620 Rip City Radio. Trailblazer Ticket Tuesday today. Your chance to win a pair of tickets for the Heat and Trailblazers this weekend at Moda. It's coming up at 5. Listen to me for your chance to win. Rip City Drive's coming up next. Frank Schwab, Yahoo Sports, talking NFL at 3:20. And Joe DeLeon on the college football playoff at 5:20. All right, Michael Shacker going with a little minute work right now. They will be on tour this summer with Christopher Cross and Toto, and they're going to be up at Cascades Amphitheater in Clark County at the end of August. Actually, week 0 of college football. And they're also going to be in Vegas shortly before that, but that's a show I'm probably going to have to check out. Now, Colin Hay, who is the man behind the vocals on this song we're listening to right now, the head man for Minute Work, he's been touring around for years with Ringo Starr's All-Star Band. I had a chance to see him last year down in Vegas with my buddy Steve. A great show, and I love Ringo. He's got a lot of energy for a man in his 80s, but of all the guys who sang and performed, Colin Hay was the most impressive. Also, a very good documentary on Colin Hay floating around on YouTube I would recommend checking out. It talks about his life in music, and it's very personable, and it's free. So go search Colin Hay documentary. You'll find it on YouTube. All right, show today. Here's what we got planned. With the Blazers' East Coast schedule this week, they've got a number of early games. Yesterday, they were in Detroit. Tomorrow and Thursday, they're going to be on the road tomorrow in New Orleans. And then Friday, I'm going to be down at Spirit Mountain Casino for the college football playoff. Alex Brink is going to join me for the entire show, which is awesome. So if you're planning on heading out to the coast, if you're going to be down in the area, come on down to Spirit Mountain Casino, the place to wager on college sports here in Oregon. So Alex Brink and I will be down there. So with the 2 early Blazer games tomorrow and Thursday, I want to make sure that we get a lot of football talk in, and that's going to be the primary focus of today's show because we have so many different things going on. 6 head coaching vacancies in the NFL right now. Wild card weekend will kick off on Saturday. We go 2 games, 3 games, and then the Monday night game. A triple header on Sunday involving my Denver Broncos. They kick off against the Bills at 10 a.m. on CBS. So I want to talk NFL playoffs. I want to talk about some of these coach vacancies. And then, of course, the playoff, which is going to be on the 9th and 10th. So we have a lot of good things going on right now. A lot of big stories, a lot of big games this weekend. So we're going to talk with Frank Schwab, Yahoo Sports. He'll join us here in 15 minutes. And then Joe DeLeon is going to stop by at 5:20. He is a college football NFL draft analyst, expert. Love talking ball with him. So we'll really focus in on the college football playoff. I want to ask him about the Ducks as well, get his take on Dan Lanning and what the next step is. Lanning, like Kenny Dillingham down at Arizona State, one of the younger coaches in the country. I think Dan Lanning's 38 years old. He took over a program that was in a good position. I think he's elevated the program. He's obviously a phenomenal recruiter. He does a great job in the portal. What is the next step for Dan Lanning and that program to take another step forward, to get closer to winning a national championship? So Joe DeLeon coming up at 5:20. It's also a Trailblazer Ticket Tuesday. We have a pair of tickets for the Heat and Trailblazers this weekend at Moda Center. All you have to do is listen to me for your chance to win, and we'll do it today at 5 o'clock. Every Tuesday throughout the entire NBA season, we have tickets to give away for the Trailblazers, courtesy of, well, me and your Portland Trailblazers. And for all of your Trailblazer ticket needs, simply head over to trailblazers.com. Also, if you're out there driving around, we have a new update to the iHeartRadio app. It's really good. And the app is awesome because it's your place where you can listen to the Rip City Drive, Blazers Game Day with Chris Burkhardt, fifth quarter. And just a reminder that we do stream all of the Trailblazer games on the app. So that way, if you're at home or you've got your Alexa, all you have to do is say, listen to Rip City Radio, and then boom, you can listen to the Trailblazer games and Travis Demers on the call. So just keep that in mind. I love streaming the app in my car through the Bluetooth because you get the good sound and you've got everything right there. But just a reminder, the update on the app is really solid. And you got the presets now with the stations, too. So just something to keep in mind as you're out there bumping around. All right, I want to talk about some of the news out of the NFL with the coaching vacancies. I mean, it's a big week. Of course, Black Monday, where a lot of guys get fired for not getting the job done. And you've got openings, and we've got Wild Card Weekend coming up. It was announced today that Antonio Pierce has been fired by the Raiders after one season. One season, and Antonio Pierce is out. You know, I've got a special place in my heart for Mark Davis, the owner of the Raiders, son of Al Davis. During my time in the Bay Area, I was alarmed at how much people disrespected him at every turn. And the reason why, well, his father, Al Davis, cast such a massive shadow that Mark had a hard time getting out from underneath that. People respected his dad. His dad was beloved, but ever since Mark was young, no one ever took him seriously. They made fun of him. They didn't listen to him. He was like the black sheep inside of the organization. But after Al passed away, Mark took over. And it's been a process for him. He managed to do the one thing that his father could never do, and that was get a brand new stadium in a brand new city, Las Vegas, and I respect him for that. He did what no one thought was possible. People laughed at him through the whole process, and yet he was able to get a brand new crown jewel built in Las Vegas. So I respect him for that because he did it in the face of criticism and people laughing at him. And he's got the silly haircut and all that stuff, but there's a part of me that, you know, I got a special place in my heart for Mark. But outside of that accomplishment of getting to Vegas, the football side has been much like we saw under his father. Pretty much a disaster. The Raiders are a losing franchise that hasn't won a Super Bowl since 1984. Now, to put that in perspective, I was 9 years old. 9 years old. I'm now 49 years old. So they haven't won a Super Bowl in 40 years, and they have all these ridiculous things like commitment to excellence. But yet, they haven't been anywhere close to excellent in a very long time. Now, Mark Davis did hire Jack Del Rio, who looked great at the start, but that ended quickly. He then went for John Gruden, but that ended in chaos with Davis being forced to fire him. And the Josh McDaniels, well, that was just a bad hire, which ended with his players demanding his firing, and then David Pierce. Now, as I mentioned before, if Mark would have just called me and been like, hey, should I hire Josh McDaniels? I would have reminded him of the train wreck in Denver and how Josh embarrassed Pat Bowlen and tried to run the franchise into the ground. Shouldn't have hired him. But on the flip side, he shouldn't have overcorrected by hiring Antonio Pierce. Just let this be a helpful reminder. Anytime you see players who are clamoring for one guy to get the coaching job, I can guarantee you that it's not going to work out. I mean, it's great that Davis listened to his players and his vets, and he cared about their input, but they can't dictate the choice. The Pierce hiring with Andy Reid, Sean Payton, and Jim Harbaugh in the division, it makes you look JV, like small potatoes. I mean, come on. What are we doing here? You're going up against Andy Reid, Sean Payton, and Jim Harbaugh, three of the best coaches in the history of the league, and you're going to roll out there with Antonio Pierce? That doesn't make sense to me. So if I were Davis, I would listen to Tom Brady. Don't rush a decision, but make sure you hire a Mike Vrabel type to come in and be a culture builder. I think Las Vegas needs a proven coach to come in and really just start from scratch and get things back on track. And I would really take a long look at Pete Carroll, someone that has taken over junk and turned things around. They need a coach with experience. They need a coach that has conviction and an understanding of how to build a culture. Mike Vrabel and Pete Carroll know how to do that, and there are others available that can do the same. Mike Vrabel, maybe they've got an outside chance at Vrabel because of his connection with Tom Brady. But Pete Carroll right now, I think, would be a logical choice. He's older, but, age is just, I don't know, it's some type of social construct. Like somehow when you're older, you can't get the job done. Pete is a very young man at heart. He's got a lot of energy. And most importantly, he's well connected around the league, so he can bring in a good staff. But Pete Carroll's taken over disasters and has rebuilt them into something special. Pete Carroll is a man of conviction that has strength, and he understands how to build a culture. Just look at what he did with USC, and then take a look at Seattle. Pete Carroll, yeah, he's annoying with the floppy hair and the gum chewing and stuff, but he's a darn good football coach. But most importantly, he's tailor-made for this type of job. And the good thing about Davis is that he'll hire you and pay you big and then allow you to do what you do. So go culture if you're the Raiders. In the other openings right now for the Patriots, Mike Vrabel makes the most sense because of his connection to the franchise, and the Patriots are really big on bringing someone in to be coached that has a connection to the franchise. But the Patriots are a mess. The roster's poor, and the genius Bob Kraft doesn't look quite the genius without Brady or Belichick. But Mike Vrabel, I think, is number one on their list. For the Raiders, as I mentioned, you want to go culture builder. In Chicago, Ben Johnson would be a home run, but it's a risky selection if Ben Johnson decides he wants to leave Detroit and become a head coach. The ownership group is a mess. Whoever takes the job is going to need to be strong and stand up to the front office when it's necessary and have the balls to do that. If not Johnson, I would look at Pete Carroll. I would look at Mike Vrabel. But I think Pete Carroll, much like the situation with the Raiders, I think Pete Carroll would be a good selection for Chicago because he's got the gravitas to be able to stand up to, the power struggle, and he knows how to rebuild a mess. But that franchise needs stability, and they were dumb. They screwed up last year. They should have fired Eberflus at the end of last year, and then made a new hire, knowing that you're going to have access to Caleb Williams, but they didn't, and that's going to come back to bite them. Elsewhere, Jacksonville, it doesn't really matter. That's where coaches go to die. Their ownership group is a clown show. Firing Peterson, that was a good decision, but keeping GM Trent Baalke is insane. If I was an experienced coach, I would not want that job. Someone will take the job because there's always coaches out there who are looking to get into the head coaching ranks, and they'll take it. But, man, you'd be set up probably for failure. All right, let's keep things rolling. We'll dive into all of this. Frank Schwab, Yahoo Sports. So just make a little mental note. Trailblazer ticket Tuesday at 5. Your chance to win tickets for the Trailblazers in Heat, 5 o'clock. We're going to talk with Joe DeLeon, who is a draft and college football expert at 5:20. And then my good friend Colin Amos is going to stop by at 4:20 in studio to answer your questions. I hope you're enjoying your Tuesday afternoon. It's going to be nice. We have sunshine coming up the next week, a rarity in these parts during this time of year. Frank Schwab, Yahoo Sports, is up next. We'll ask him what makes the most sense for the Chicago Bears, for the Raiders, and then I'll have him do a quick hit on each wildcard game to get his predictions. He's number one amongst the NFL media in selecting winners, so we'll get that from him next. All right, nice work, Shaq. A little Public Enemy. Very happy our next guest was able to make time for the show. A lot of things to talk about with him. He is an NFL expert from Yahoo Sports. Frank Schwab is back. You can follow him on social at Yahoo Schwab. Hey, Frank, I appreciate the time. Do you think Tom Brady will be back in the broadcast booth next season, or is this like a one and done with Fox?
I assume he'll be back just because, $300 million is a lot to turn down. I know a lot of people criticized him. They expected him to be incredible. Part of that is his stature. Part of that was the paycheck. I thought he was fine. I didn't have any big issue with him. He wasn't great. It wasn't like, oh, wow, John Madden's back. It was more like, okay, well, he's there. It wasn't terrible by any means. He was fine. He had his mistakes like anybody first year on any job. So I think it's perfectly reasonable. The only way I can see him not coming back is if he just wants to throw himself into the Raiders thing. He's got that interest there, 5% team ownership. He's involved in the head coaching search, which I wrote about. Obviously makes a big conflict of interest with him calling playoff games with assistant coaches who he might be interviewing. But I think unless the NFL puts a stop to it, unless he just wants to do the Raiders thing, I don't see any reason why he wouldn't be back for another season. I think he wasn't so bad that I think that both sides want to get out of it or anything.
Yeah, no, I agree. I didn't have any issue with his broadcasting. And I'm sure you can remember the first time you did any type of radio hit or you did any type of podcast. Like my first tapes on radio are just awful. So you get better with time, and he will. I just know he's a man with a lot of varied interests. But let's go to the Raiders situation. I don't really know how desirable that job is, but Frank, what is the best process for Mark Davis to go through to make sure he makes this hire the right one in a division with Andy Reid, Sean Payton, and Jim Harbaugh?
Yeah, it's tough because I don't think that job is too desirable. What do they have to sell, really? Okay, you can come here. You don't have a quarterback. You don't have a draft pick where you can get a quarterback. You don't have much talent other than Brock Bowers and Max Crosby. But it's one of 32. That's what you got, and that's why the Raiders generally haven't gotten it right. They've chased a lot of big names that were just dumb, like John Gruden, I guess, and Josh McDaniels was just a terrible, terrible hire. They should have known better than that. I understood giving Antonio Pierce a year to see if he was a real deal. He's not, and that's fine. They found out, and now they move on. I just think about somebody like Ben Johnson, who's obviously the Lions offensive coordinator, having a great year. He's the belle of the ball. Everybody wants to hire him. The Raiders go to him and say, hey, we want to interview you. Why would Ben Johnson interview there? What? And I think a lot of good candidates are going to say the same thing. What do you really have to offer me? It's just a bad spot right now the Raiders are in, and just the perpetual losing, the roster not being very good. You're in a division that's going to be really, really tough. You look around, and not just Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes. Now you got Justin Herbert and Jim Harbaugh. Now you got Sean Payton and Bo Nix. Bo Nix played pretty well this year. So you're clearly the fourth best team in that division. I think you're going to have to hit a home run on some probably young guy who just wants his foot in the door and is really energetic, and you just happen to find the next Sean McVay. That can happen. It's tough though, and I don't. I don't envy Mark Davis trying to get this right because it is a very, very tough job to sell.
No, I agree. Do the Bears need the young offensive mind like Ben Johnson because of their quarterback, Caleb Williams, or should they look at a culture builder with experience to be their next head coach?
It's so tough. The problem with not getting an offensive coach, Ben Johnson, Liam Cohen, whatever offensive mind you want to bring up, is – okay, you hire a good offensive coordinator to work with Caleb Williams. Well, if that guy does well, he's gone in here for another head coaching job. Look at what's kind of happened in Tampa Bay the last 2 years. Canales gets a job. Liam Cohen might get a job. That's kind of what happens. If you're a prisoner of your own success in that way, where if you hire a great offensive coordinator who does a fantastic job with Caleb Williams, well, he's gone. And now you're starting over. So I don't know that I love that, but I do think the Bears just need to hire somebody who's going to instill some kind of winning ways there. When we talk about bad franchises, we don't often talk about the Bears because they've been around a long time and it seems like they're okay. But when you really dig into the Bears and what they've done, they haven't had an all-pro quarterback since 1950. This is ridiculous.
That's unreal.
It's incredible how bad they've been, honestly. And I don't really trust them to get this right. And yes, if you can bring in a guy like a Mike Vrabel, let's say, who I really have a lot of respect for as coach, I mean, that's great. But why would Mike Vrabel want that job? With their power structure is not lined up in a way where he can have a lot of that power, which he probably wants. I don't know. In general, I'm good with a CEO coach. I really am. Get a leader, get a Dan Campbell who can pick good coordinators and whatnot. But the issue with that, like I said, is okay. Offensive coordinator does great with Caleb Williams. You're not holding on to him very long, so you're still in the same cycle.
Do you think Pete Carroll will get a look this offseason, this cycle?
I don't know. Maybe I wouldn't have a problem with it. I think he's a heck of a football coach. Like the success is his record is his record, right? Like it's hard to deny him that. There's ageism that goes along with this, though. I mean, Pete is older than Bill Belichick. I think he's 73 at this point, and we don't think of that because Pete is so energetic, and that's awesome. And I really like Pete. I've enjoyed any time I've been around him, Super Bowls or whatever. But comes a time when you're like, okay, well, is this our coach for 5 years when he's 79 years old? I mean, that does have to cross your mind. It shouldn't, but it does. And I think it's going to be a stumbling block for a lot of these teams. None of these teams with an opening are in win now mode. Maybe the Bears, if you really want to stretch it. Maybe the Bears could feel like, hey, we got to win quickly here because we have a lot of talent on hand, including our young quarterback. But most of these teams are like, what are the Saints doing with Pete Carroll, and what are Pete Carroll doing with the Saints? Like, what point is there in that? So I just don't know if there's a right fit for Pete Carroll. I think he's a heck of a coach, but I don't know if it's going to be easy for him to find the right spot or for the right team to find him.
All right, we're talking with Frank Schwab, Yahoo Sports. Frank, what the heck is going on in Jacksonville? They fired Doug Peterson, but keep Trent Baalke. I mean, a coach with experience, I think, would have to think long and hard about taking that job.
Yeah, and being very cynical. I mean, Shad Khan has always been known for being a very disengaged owner, and it just comes off, right or wrong, as it's just going to be too much of a hassle to find a GM and a coach. So we'll just placate everybody and fire the coach, but whatever. I don't want to do both of these. That's what it comes off as.
I know.
GM and coach searches are very hard and they're expensive, and they take a lot of time, and it just makes Shad Khan look like, I don't care. Whatever. Trent Baalke's fine. You go find a coach. Like he's just. I feel bad for the Jacksonville Jaguars fans because they deserve better than that, right? Like Trent Baalke's really done nothing to earn hiring another coach, right? But he's going to get the chance to do that. And you're right. Like, what coach would want to go work there when you know, like, the GM hasn't had much success? That team's not very good. They haven't been good for a while. The owner is absentee most of the time. You're dealing with a GM who just he's not your guy probably, so it cuts down on your candidates immediately. It's just a bad process. It's a bad process for an organization. And we sit here and wonder why the same teams come up every time we talk every offseason about this time. What teams are we talking about? We're talking about the Jets. We're talking about the Jaguars. We're talking about the Raiders. There's a reason. There's a reason all of these teams are bad constantly, and it's usually ownership. And I think in this case, it's pretty clear that Jacksonville is not getting the best effort, let's say, out of its leadership.
Well, you make a good point. I'm looking at the draft order right now. Tennessee, Cleveland, the Giants, Jacksonville, right. Raiders, Jets, Carolina, New Orleans. It's like, and Chicago's there at 10. It's like, that's pretty much the same teams every year.
Same teams every year, yeah. They might spike up once in a while, but mainly those teams you just listed are teams we're talking about in the top 10 every year.
Yeah.
And it's just a common thread in a lot of those teams is bad ownership.
Yep.
Jimmy Haslam and Shad Khan and Woody Johnson. And, I mean, you can go on where they just can't get it right because the infrastructure is so bad there. And it's a long that conversation we always have. What do you do when your favorite team's ownership just stinks? You can't fire them. There's no any team with a decent ownership situation. You can say, well, we could be the Houston Texans and find our quarterback and coach in one off season and we're off to the races. You can't do that with ownership. You're just stuck. You're just stuck with bad ownership, and there's really nothing you could do about it.
All right. Mike McDonald doesn't sound exactly sold on Geno Smith. The Seahawks traded Russ a few years ago, and they still don't have the long-term answer at quarterback. So, what are they doing?
Yeah, I, I bet Mike McDonald wishes he could have that one back because it just came off so bad.
Oh,
It
it's
just made it
bad.
sound like, well, he's here, I guess, whatever. Like you want a little more enthusiasm going into your off season, and Gino probably was like, what the heck? Like that, I'd hope for a little bit more of a vote of confidence in that. You're not gonna. The simple answer is you're not going to go out and find a better Week 1 2025 starter than Geno Smith if you're the Seahawks. I mean, maybe you could talk yourself into the Sam Darnold fantasy, but I don't know the Vikings are letting him go. So you look around the league, you look at how many teams are going to be chasing quarterbacks, you look at the available pool of quarterbacks, and you say, this game of musical chairs ain't going to be good. I guarantee you if Geno Smith was let go, that there's 5 teams that would be calling him within 10 minutes because they don't have a better option than Geno Smith next year. And that's what the Seahawks face, and it's a tough spot to be in. It's a really tough spot to be in where you pretty much know at this point Geno's not getting you to a Super Bowl. Like, I don't think so anyway. I guess if everything comes around and you improve the offensive line and the Mike McDonald's second-year defense kind of takes hold and they could take off, yeah, okay, I guess it can happen. It's happened to lesser quarterbacks than Geno Smith. But most likely you're sitting here saying, this ain't the guy to take us to the promised land. But our other options are way, way worse. So what do we do? And I guess the answer is you just keep running it with Geno until you find a better long-term answer. But they're kind of stuck. The Seahawks are stuck right now, and it's not an enviable position to be in.
What do you think the Vikings will do with Sam Darnold? Will they allow him to become a free agent? Will they franchise him? What makes the most sense here?
I'd be shocked if he's not franchised, really. Like, look, the whole goal of this thing is to find a quarterback. And sometimes you find it in unusual ways you didn't expect. And the Vikings got a guy, and I get he struggled on Sunday night. I do get it. Like, he did not look good. But to me, this is not some every week is going to be Sam Darnold referendum week, and we're going to he has one struggle, and we say, look, oh, yeah, I told you he's no good. No, Sam Darnold had a good season. He's pretty good. And the Vikings didn't exactly plan on that when they drafted J.J. McCarthy 10th overall, but they found a quarterback who was at a top 10 level most of the season. And I don't think you turn your back on that and hope that J.J. McCarthy's top 10. Like, I think the franchise tag allows you to buy a little bit of time, and whatever's going to happen is going to happen. But I don't see him hitting free agency. It would blow me away if he hit free agency. Either there's some long-term deal in place and they figure it out as they go, or it's the franchise tag and again they figure it out as they go. But I don't see any kind of a scenario where he's just a free agent in March. That would be crazy to me if I was Vikings.
All right, here's what I want to do to finish up my time with you, Frank. No one in the NFL media is better than picking games than you. You're literally number one. So what I want to do is get a quick hitter with each wild card game with you, just to get your feel on it. Starting with the Chargers at the Texans. LA's favored by 3. What do you think?
Easily my favorite game. I think the Chargers are going to just destroy them. Like not like 40-7 destroy them, but a game where if you have Chargers, you're never going to feel that uncomfortable. I think the Texans are the worst team in the playoff field. Maybe Pittsburgh, but Houston has just been terrible for weeks. And I think the Chargers are a really, really good football team. So that was a matchup I was hoping to get because, yes, I let's say I'm invested on the Chargers this week.
All right, Steelers at the Ravens. Baltimore laying 10 against a division opponent.
It's hard, in this rivalry. It's hard to look at 10 and take the favorite, but I also don't know how the Steelers cover. Like, we saw this game 3 weeks ago, and it was 34-17. The Steelers have not led a football game since December 8th.
Oh, my gosh.
Like, think about that. Like, they haven't even had a lead. Yeah, they've trailed or been tied in every single game going back a month. I mean, I don't know what happened. I really don't. I get that they went into an offensive slump with Russ, but my goodness, they went from a 10-3 team to just looking like one of the worst teams in football. And this Ravens team, I mean, skipping to the end, if you were going to ask me, I'll offer it up anyway. The Ravens are my Super Bowl pick. I think this is the team that's going to win a Super Bowl. So, yeah, not a game that I'm like excited about as far as maybe investing in, but I do think I just. How could you take the Steelers at this point?
Yeah, I'm with you on that. It's hard to see them being able to score. Broncos at the Bills Sunday morning. Buffalo an 8.5-point favorite.
I think the Broncos can keep it close. I really do. Like, this defense is legit, and the great coach.
What is it? 63 sacks.
Really, really well.
Yeah, 63 sacks. They have 63 sacks this year. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, and the defensive player of the year, Patrick Surtain. I'm glad he's going to win it because he deserves it. He's been awesome all year. At least he's the favorite. I don't know if he's going to win it, but he's the favorite. Yeah, and then Bo Nix has just played well. Like I get it's a different deal going to Buffalo for your first ever playoff game, but he's got a lot of experience from his college days, and I just think this football team's pretty good. It might not be the prettiest game, but I actually think the Broncos can give them a scare. I think the Bills win, but I think it's pretty close.
You know, I used to live in Denver. I know you're based out of Denver. I'm a Bronco fan.
Yeah.
Have the Broncos found their franchise quarterback?
Oh, yeah. I mean,
no question, right?
I don't know what Bo Nix's ceiling is. I don't know if he's ever going to win an MVP award or anything like that, but I do know that him and Sean Payton are just a perfect match together. The way Sean Payton has said, like, he's the guy I wanted in a draft, and now you can see why. Like, I think this is a really, really good marriage between those two.
Packers at the Eagles, Philly favored by 4.5.
I suppose Jalen Hurts is playing, and that leads me to the Eagles, who, I mean, the last two games they played with a second-string quarterback and then a third-string quarterback, and they won those games 58-20. I'm not saying that the Giants and Cowboys are any great shakes, but there's a football team that's just kind of blown out everybody right now, even if Jalen Hurts isn't in the lineup. So I have questions about Jordan Love's health. I mean, after he left that game was meaningful for them to try to move up, to not have to go to Philly. So he had to be pretty hurt to not be back in that game. I wonder if that lingers onto this week. He'll play. I don't have any doubt that Jordan Love's going to play, but is he 100%? So I go with the Eagles here. The Eagles are my NFC pick. I think the Eagles are one of the more well-rounded teams in the NFL. They're 12-1 since September.
Wow.
This is a really, really good football team that can beat you in many ways.
All right, another team with a rookie quarterback, the Commanders at the Bucs. Tampa Bay, just a field goal favorite here.
I think this is the best game of Wild Card Weekend. If you're just talking about not matchups necessarily, but which game is going to give us the most entertainment value, I'll take this one. If I can only watch one game, this would be it. I just think these two teams are really good on offense, two good quarterbacks. It's just going to be fun back and forth. I love Jaden Daniels. I really do. I think he's already a top, 6, 7 quarterback in the NFL. He's really good. But Baker Mayfield threw 42 touchdowns this year. I think it ended up being. I mean, this Buccaneers team they won at Detroit. They should have won at Kansas City if they go for 2. Like, they're not scared of anybody. I think this is if there's one team in the playoff field of the 14 that is not a quote-unquote favorite, like a Ravens, a Bills, Chiefs, all those teams. If there's one team that we're like, whoa, how did that team make a Super Bowl? I think it might be the Bucs. I think they're good enough to make a run like that. So I'm taking them. I think the Bucs win this game, and the Commanders are coming. They're going to have a good off season. They're going to put a lot of pieces around Jaden Daniels, but I still think they're a year away from kind of being in the mix to make a playoff run.
Well, I'm with you, man. Jaden Daniels, so much fun to watch this year. Finally, Vikings, the ultimate loser from last Sunday. They drop to the 5 and have to go on the road. They're going to be at the Rams. Minnesota right now favored by 1.5. Is this a danger spot for Minnesota?
Yeah, this is my one. And not that it's a crazy, crazy upset. I'm not picking, UMBC to beat Virginia or anything, but I'm picking the Rams. I think this is just a bad spot for the Vikings, who are just due for a letdown. And this isn't look. And part of me really feels bad about this because I've said for weeks the Vikings have just been completely disrespected, and for no good reason. They're 14-1 against everybody other than Detroit. They're good on defense, good on offense, well coached. Darnold's not a fraud. Like, this was a good football team. But how is there not some letdown when you're playing for the 1 seed in the NFC? You lose, and your reward, quote unquote, is, hey, go play the Los Angeles Rams on the road week 1. Like, that's tough. I mean, it's got to deflate the balloon a little bit coming off of that game and that loss and the way they lost. They didn't look very good. Meanwhile, the Rams rested last week. They sat their guys. I was surprised because that took them out of the mix of avoiding the Lions-Vikings loser. I mean, they didn't even want to move up to the 3 seed. They just said, we're fine with the 4 seed. We're going to play Jimmy Garoppolo and let everybody rest. That kind of led me to believe they're not scared of the Lions or Vikings. And it's a well-coached team. Their offense has been in a slump. That does worry me, but this Rams team is pretty good. The defense has played pretty well. I think they match up well with the Vikings. I'll pick the Rams and feel bad about it because it just seems like another way to disrespect this Vikings team that's 14-3 this year and just had an unbelievable season.
All right, you can follow him on social at Yahoo Schwab to get his content. You can read him at Yahoo Sports. It's Frank Schwab here in the Rip City Drive. Frank, man, thanks for the time, buddy. Enjoy the games, and good luck with your getting your free money on the Chargers this weekend.
Go Jim Harbaugh. Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, thanks, buddy. There's Frank Schwab.
See.
All right. He likes Philadelphia and Baltimore in the Super Bowl, and that made Scotty Bethune very happy. He's a Ravens fan. And he loves the Chargers over the Texans. The Texans do look like a mess right now, and their offensive line is just hot garbage. You would think the Chargers, with their defense, would be able to get pressure nonstop on C.J. Stroud. And for the Broncos, I'm excited that they're going to be in the playoffs for the first time since they won Super Bowl 50. I don't have high expectations going into Buffalo. I think Denver will lose by 40. But the most important thing is they found their quarterback in Bo Nix, which is awesome. All right, when we come back, I'll give you great insight from Benjamin Albright, another one of our NFL insiders, good friend of the show. He's got what he thinks is going to happen in the coaching carousel. I'll share that next. Colin Amos is going to be in studio at 4:20, and then we'll talk college football playoff with Joe DeLeon at 5:20 here on the Rip City Drive. Well, this Queensryche feels really good on the ears right now. I remember the first time I heard Jet City Woman, I was like, whoa, it is the greatest thing I have ever heard. I think that was summer of 91. Jeff Tate is the man on the lead vocals right now. I had a chance to interview him once. He's a fascinating individual. He's really big into the wine game now. And he told me that he loves the Northwest because of the soils, which provide for you can grow many type of different types of grapes out here in the Northwest because of the soil. And he said because of that versatility, what he's noticing now when he travels, even in France and different places around the world, that there are a lot of Northwest labels that are popping up on menus now in different countries, which is pretty cool. But yeah, Jeff Tate, rocker and yet wildly fascinating all at the same time. Benjamin Albright, he wants Pete Carroll to be hired by the Raiders because you'd have a rekindling of the rivalry between Pete Carroll and Jim Harbaugh. And we knew about that with USC and Stanford, and then, of course, with the Seahawks and the 49ers. So it would be fascinating to see the Raiders and Chargers, one of the more bitter rivalries in the NFL. That would be rekindled big time if you have Pete Carroll and Jim Harbaugh leading both those teams. I think Pete Carroll would be a great hire for the Raiders because they're a train wreck right now. And they need stability, and they need someone to come in and just lay the foundation and build a culture. And Pete Carroll, although he annoys me, mostly because he has been coaching against my team in different capacities, I respect the heck out of him. He's a darn good football coach, and he's someone that has been around. He's got a ton of experience, but, I mean, he knows how to build a culture, and he could do that with the Raiders right now. They need that type of direction. That franchise has been lost for so long. It's like, ugh, yuck. What a mess. So, and this is important for Mark Davis. He's got to get this one right. He totally bombed on the last two hires. You can make an argument the last three hires were absolute just duds. In John Gruden, obviously Josh McDaniels was a disaster. What a train wreck that was. And I saw that one coming because he coached the Broncos. He was terrible. I can't stand Josh McDaniels. The guy's a clown coach. And then, this latest hire of Antonio, where he got talked into it by his players. You can't do that. You got to have the backbone to be like, look, I appreciate your input, guys, but we're going to make the best hire for the franchise, not the coach that everyone wants because he's the player's coach. That's a good way to set yourself up for disaster, Antonio Pierce. But Benjamin Albright, he's as well connected as anybody I know covering the NFL, and he's got his list out in terms of what he thinks is going to happen, his best case or best guesses, and he's usually spot on with this. He thinks the Patriots will get Mike Vrabel. He thinks the Saints will get Coach Glenn or Coach Brady. The Raiders, Pete Carroll or Liam Cohen. The Jags will get Cohen or Johnson. The Bears will get Johnson or Flores. And he says the Jets, if the Saints don't get Glenn, he'd be in play. Monken might be in play here. Lost out to Adam Gase last time he interviewed with the Jets. So we'll see what happens. I know that Rex Ryan's putting his name in the ring. He wants to be the Jets head coach. That makes sense to me on certain levels because Rex understands the franchise. And the Jets are a terrible franchise from top down. They stink. But Rex understands it. He knows how to connect with the fan base. He's got the backbone and the toughness to handle that job. So if I had to guess with Aaron Rodgers, he'll play next year. There's no way he's going to shut it down. I just don't think it will be with the Jets. He'll go somewhere else. But Aaron Rodgers, he's played well over the last several weeks to end out the season. I just don't think that he wants to end his career this way. There's no way. He's too proud of an athlete to walk out like this. So my guess is he'll play. It'll be somewhere else, and we'll see how things shake out. In regards to the wild card games for me, we heard from Frank Schwab. His favorite game of the weekend is he loves the Chargers to jackhammer the Texans. And it would look like the Chargers are set up for success here because the Texans have been beat up. They're battered. Their offensive line is terrible. I just don't know if they're going to be able to score consistently and give enough time to C.J. Stroud for him to be able to do his work. And they've suffered some extreme injuries as well. But I like the Chargers to beat the Texans. I like the Bills to hammer the Broncos. I know a lot of people think that game's going to be close, and I want it to be close. I'd love to see Denver win, but I just don't see how it happens. I mean, I don't think they have enough firepower or enough defense to slow down that machine. And the Buffalo freight train is coming. Buffalo is a legit contender to win the championship. They've got a massive firepower, and they've got the NFL MVP, and they've got more balance on offense, and they're going to have a significant home field advantage. I just don't see how the Broncos compete. I think the Bills win big. I like the Eagles to beat the Packers. The Eagles are the one team that can go into Detroit and win and get to the Super Bowl. In fact, Philadelphia is probably my favorite to get out of the NFC right now because of all the injuries Detroit has suffered on the defensive side of the ball. I like the Bucs over the Commanders. Should be a heck of a game. Can't wait to watch Jaden Daniels in his first playoff game. Huge Jaden Daniels fan. He's been sensational this year. Bo Nix has been sensational, but I would give the Offensive Rookie of the Year to Jaden Daniels. And what a job by that new ownership group. They come in, they make good hires in the front office and on the coaching staff, and then they draft Jaden Daniels. The rest is history. I like the Vikings to edge the Rams. And that's kind of what I'm seeing for Wild Card Weekend. Oh, it'd be great. It would be like a dream come true for Denver to beat Buffalo, but it's not happening. Denver will get throttled. But, again, this is all gravy. The most important thing this year to me was gaining the knowledge of what Bo Nix was. Was he the guy or not? Well, he's the guy. And now they can build on that going forward, which is terrific. All right, we'll keep things rolling here. I want to touch on the Blazers when we come back. And Colin Amos, my good friend from Goldberg Jones, 1-800-DIVORCE, will be in studio at 4:20 to answer your questions. And don't forget, 5 o'clock today, Trailblazer Ticket Tuesday. I've got a pair of tickets, your chance to win and see the Blazers and Heat, courtesy of me and the Portland Trailblazers coming up at 5. All right, 4 o'clock chat here. We start with the NFL. The Raiders have fired head coach Antonio Pierce after one season. They will retain GM Tom Telesco. Tom Brady expected to be a part of the head coaching interviews. Miami Dolphins GM Chris Greer says that Tyreek Hill did not request a trade during the exit interview. And Vikings defensive coordinator Brian Flores says he will take every interview request. NFL wildcard weekend will kick off with the Chargers and Texans from Houston. Kickoff Saturday at 1:30 on CBS. LA favored by 3. Blazers drop a close one last night in Detroit. Ant game high 36. Trailblazers dished out 32 assists. Portland will continue their 5-game roadie tomorrow in New Orleans against the Pelicans. Tip-off at 5. Chris Burkhardt with Blazers game day at 3. Here on 620 Rip City Radio, presented by Coors Light. Trailblazers Ticket Tuesday coming up today at 5. You can win a pair of tickets for the Heat and Trailblazers this weekend at Moda Center. All you have to do is listen to me for your chance to win. All right, Sean and Sandy. He said he's seen Queensryche twice. He saw him open up for AC/DC the first time. I have not seen them in concert. Have you seen Queensryche in concert, Shaq? You've seen a lot of
I
shows.
missed them. They played at the State Fair. They played at Crystal Ballroom. I always miss them.
You know, the Crystal Ballroom's a nice venue. It's very intimate. I like that spot. I've been down there a couple of times. Do you like that for a venue for shows?
Oh, I do. I feel like I only go see shows when it's not in Blazer season. Like, you're getting me all talking about concerts, new venue name up north. And I feel like I'm not going to see a concert until after this Blazer season
Well,
ends.
I know. I live in the same world, too. You're so busy like I am during basketball season. You know, my life goes on hold. And then when season's over and I got, 5 or 6 months of free time, I get out and do the travel and the concerts and the golf. That's the way it goes. We're busy this time of year with the Blazer games. In fact, they got a back-to-back situation kicking off tomorrow in New Orleans against the Pelicans. We'll talk college football playoff with Joe DeLeon, NFL draft expert, college football expert, insider. He's everything. He'll come up at 5:20, and Colin Amos is going to stop by in studio here in 20 minutes, and we've got your questions. He'll answer the questions, and we'll get the latest from our man, Colin Amos. Let's go out to the phones. It's a brand new year, and I can't think of a better time to have my first conversation with this guy in 2025, Mitch in New Jersey. Happy New Year, Mitch. What's on your mind?
Good, Chad. Happy New Year, too. Happy and healthy to you and your family, brother.
Well, I appreciate it. You too, buddy.
Yeah. My grandson's watching me, so yeah, he keeps me busy.
No pressure.
I say Pete Carroll go to USC. Not happy with Lincoln Riley, man. They're losing more than they're gaining plays in this transfer. It's free agency. They just got themselves a college now going to have GMs now, right? Does that mean they can make trades in October, November? I'm just wondering.
Well, I think it was smart for Stanford to bring in Andrew Luck because when he makes a phone call to a high-level donor, don't you think they'll pick up the phone now?
Oh, yeah. Stanford, ACC. That's ACC territory now.
That's
right?
True. Yeah.
Don't forget. And the Raiders don't know what they're doing. Pierce, they should have kept him. But, of course, the GM he didn't fire himself, right? So the job's not complete. I'm hoping Raiders draft McMillan. I forgot how to say his first name, from Arizona. How about Jackson Dart in the second round? And Damon Martinez in the third round. He's a running back from Miami.
Yeah, Martinez is a good player. We saw him at Oregon State. Terrific player. Physical runner.
Yeah, Oregon State made it big. Hey, it looks like they knew what they were doing, letting go of DJ Youngalele, because I don't think he's going to get drafted, right?
Yeah.
That is funny how things have turned around.
That's true.
And I have to go back to my duty here.
Well, have
Thanks
fun
for
with your
taking my call.
grandson, buddy. You got it. There you go. That's Mitch in New Jersey. I haven't spoken with him in a while. Mitch multitasking during the phone call, too. I always find that interesting. People will call the show, and I like people to reach out because I enjoy the conversation. But then you get people like Mitch where he doesn't take the time to just put on hold for maybe 90 seconds or 2 minutes during the conversation. Like he was multitasking. He was being grandpa. It sounded like he was changing out cassette tapes. I have no idea what was going on there. but I love Mitch, and I love Mitch, and I love people with the accent. Like Travis has really acclimated well over the years here in the Northwest, but I like hearing Mitch say the way he pronounces Oregon. It makes me smile, makes me happy. And right now I'm looking at a Christmas card I got. Inside was a Barry Sanders and John Elway football card. And it says, "May the warm, loving spirit of the season bring happiness to you all year long. I really enjoy listening to you on the Rip City Drive. You're the best. Your friend, Christina." Very nice. And she's on hold right now. Let's go out there.
Yes!
Hi, Christina.
Yes! Hey, Chad, did you get my card?
I did. I just read it, and I appreciate you. Thank you so much. And I got
Yeah.
I got the card, and I got the Barry Sanders and the John Elway football cards too.
Did you get the gift card too?
My Starbucks gift card.
Yes.
I did, and you understand that coffee is the direct route into my heart. So I appreciate that because I love
Yes.
coffee.
Yes. Hey, Chad, I have a question for you.
All right. Well, I hope I have a good answer for you, Christina. What's your question?
Do you want a girlfriend?
Do I want a girlfriend?
Yes.
Well, that's an interesting question. I guess probably. The problem is that I've had a hard time, finding my true love, Christina. It's been very
I
difficult.
will date you.
I don't think you want to date me. You can do, but you can
Yes.
find Christina. You can find someone better than me. I can promise you that.
No, I will date you.
Well, if you keep sending me Starbucks gift cards and John Elway rookie cards, then you may be my one true love, Christina. That's possible.
Yeah. The guy I dated with a crown.
The last guy you dated was what?
A clown. He was not a very good guy.
Oh,
He was a bad DJ.
he was a DJ.
Yes.
All right. Well, Christina, thank you for my card.
Yeah.
I appreciate
You
that.
are welcome, Chad.
Well, thank you, Christina. All right, there you go. I hear someone calling her in the background. But Christina can do better than me. Christina, trust me, you don't want to.
Hey, you're better than a DJ.
Well, am I technically a DJ? I don't think I am.
No, you're a talk show host. Big
Yeah.
difference.
I guess a DJ is someone that spins records, or
Yeah.
at least now in today's world would be voice the playlist that's been set in front of you that's going to play.
Maybe that's her type, DJs. We should hook her up with DJ OG1.
That's right. He's a true DJ.
Yeah, maybe they would be a good power couple.
That's possible. Yeah, I was just talking with Rich Patterson last night. It's different now. When I grew up, the radio DJ was a very important person in your life. But now, if I look at my kids as they have grown, especially my daughter now, who she'll be 15 in February, YouTube and TikTok. They don't turn to the radio. When I was growing up, if I'd go to the public swimming pool or wherever we're at, outside shooting hoop, no matter where we were during the summertime, someone had the little portable box, the jukebox, the ghetto blaster, whatever you call it. It was there, and it was playing music, the radio station. It's just different. Things change. But Christina, you could do better than me. But she did. She sent me a gift card for Starbucks, which is terrific. And I've got a John Elway football card. And let's see here. What does it say on the back? The AFC carried a 13-game losing streak into the Super Bowl and into the 1997 playoffs, and the Broncos had been 0-4 on the big stage. Elway and company changed all of that on a magical night in San Diego. The 38-year-old teamed up with Terrell Davis to outduel MVP Brett Favre and lead Denver to a 31-24 win over Green Bay in Super Bowl 32. And there you go. And that card actually commemorates my favorite night in the history of sports right there. So I appreciate that, Christina. But let's see here. So that the wild card round, it will kick off at, don't forget, 1:30 on Saturday, CBS. But seriously, going back to this tankathon, they've got the draft order for the NFL. And I was thinking about this. If you just look at the top teams right now, who Tennessee's number one, followed by Cleveland, the Giants, New England, Jacksonville, Las Vegas, the Jets, the Panthers, the Saints, and then the Bears. So take New England out of it because, they had a certain level of dominance for 2 decades. They're coming off the dynasty run. We can forgive them for, some of the mishaps over the last couple of years. But every other team, 9 out of the teams in the top 10, like each and every year, you could go back 5 years, you go back 10 years. If I gave you these teams, you would be like, yeah, that pretty much makes sense. Like Tennessee has shown some level of consistency over time, but these are the same teams at the top. And the point that Frank Schwab made, and this is so true, look at the top, look at the ownership. And there's a connection between perennial losers and the lack of direction and understanding of how to perform the job and be an owner. I mean, look at the Broncos, for example. They were run by a trust. Pat Bowlen is a Hall of Fame owner, one of the greatest owners ever. But he passed away, and what happened is that the team got placed in a trust. So for several seasons, there was no one who was truly in charge. It was run by the trust. And that's no way to run an NFL franchise or any sports franchise. And so what happened is that, the Broncos for years floundered. And then finally they went out, they sold the team, and in comes the Walton Penner Group, and now they've got the richest ownership group in the NFL. They hire Sean Payton, they provide direction, and you have people at the top that know what they're doing. And they brought in a bunch of great advisors as well, including Condoleezza Rice and David Shaw from Stanford, who I believe is also going to interview for some potential openings around the NFL. But it was the ownership that got set, and now look, it's translating into on-the-field success. But these teams are always going to be there near the top. The Bears are a disaster right now. Not the best job opening because of the politics within that organization. The Saints, always been a little bit loose at the top. The Panthers are a disaster. The Jets, arguably the worst franchise in the NFL. I mean, they've been a perennial loser for most of my life. Mark Davis, we talked about his issues. Last 3 coaching hires, all disasters. And aside from being able to get that new stadium built in Vegas, which was a major accomplishment, the team hasn't been legitimate for an extended period of time. They haven't won a Super Bowl since I was 9. Jacksonville's a mess. As Frank said, Shad Khan. Do they even care? They fire Peterson but keep Trent Baalke. And Baalke's a buffoon. And then the Giants and the Browns are the worst. I take that back. I think the Browns might be worse than the Jets. The Haslam family, they're idiots. They tried to ruin Tennessee. They've screwed that up. And then you've got the Browns. They give Deshaun Watson $230 million fully guaranteed. I can guarantee you, as long as the Haslam family's in control, the Browns will be a mess. And the Titans right now, they lack direction. But it's the same teams every year. All right, we'll keep things rolling. My man, Colin Amos from Goldberg Jones, 1-800-DIVORCE is in studio next. Our first discussion of the year. We got questions to be answered, and we'll find out how he's doing in the sports gambling ring, see if he's having some success throughout the college football playoff and the NFL. That's coming up next. And then we'll talk with Joe DeLeon, and we'll focus in on college football playoff at 5:20. Don't forget Trailblazer Ticket Tuesday coming up at 5.
You are listening to the Rip City Drive with Chad Doing, brought to you by Goldberg Jones. Divorce for Men, 1-800-DIVORCE.
All right, joining us now in studio, our first conversation of 2025. Colin and I were just catching up. It's Colin Amos from Goldberg Jones, Divorce for Men, 1-800-DIVORCE. Happy New Year, buddy. It's good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you. It's great to be in.
Did you have a nice holiday time?
I did. Enough chaos, but some kind of clean moments, nice mellow moments at times.
So how do you manage work during the holiday period? Because just like the sports world never stops, neither does divorce.
Divorce never sleeps, man. Never sleeps. But people are trying to contain themselves. I do get a lot of calls that they're just trying to get through the holidays so they can deal with it later. But there's so much conflict with those stressful times. Family. There's a lot of people playing games with parenting plans and custody visitation. So, yeah, so I bury myself in the football.
Yeah,
How
that's
great
the
is
best
that,
way to
you
do
know?
it. It's been great, too. I saw where not only did the College Football Playoff get good ratings, but even the bowl ratings have been up this year, too. I've enjoyed all of it. And I thought, you and I talked about this. You and I are both big football fans, especially college football. Well, what I discovered this year that I think was the coolest thing is we knew that the expanded 12-team playoff would be a good thing. But what it did was add excitement to the regular season because each and every week you had games with playoff implications all the way up until championship weekend with all the championship games. So it did what I did not expect, and that was enhance the regular season because more teams had a chance to get in, more hope across the country with the fan bases, and I thought it made for just an awesome time.
I agree, and it cleaned out some of the bowls with the playoffs. So all of a sudden, you're not having 4 bowl games in a day, and who's going to watch some irrelevant bowls, 4 of them? But they'll watch. I certainly, as a bettor, as a gambler, you're watching 1 or 2. Well, you're watching all 4 to be honest, but you can focus in on the bowl. So like last night, they had the FCS championship with North Dakota State and Montana, and here I'm watching Monday Night Football.
Yes.
Somebody says Monday Night Football is over. I said, no, it's not.
No, it was great, and that turned out to be the lower division playoff, though, because they've had that format for a long time. It's really good, and both Montana State and North Dakota State, they play a good brand of football too.
Yeah, it was fun. The first half is like Montana State didn't come to play, and then the second half it was great, good quality football. But I agree with the rest of the bowl games. I had a great time watching them, betting them, and then probably better than the actual playoffs where they have their whole roster and everybody's playing. Those first round of games were pretty yawny.
The biggest surprise to me was the Alamo Bowl, BYU and Colorado, when it was announced, and then we knew that both teams were going to play the majority of their guys, and Shedeur and Travis Hunter were going to be in that game. I thought Colorado's going to win that game, and then they went out and got their butt kicked.
That's right. So you didn't know how much their heart was really into it, but their dad was making them play, and he's got to play for his dad there.
And your Huskies, the Sun Bowl turned out to be wildly fascinating.
That
Great
was
finish.
Fun. Great finish. Real fun. So
I've been down to that game a couple of times now, and both times I went down, the weather was perfect. But it's kind of cool to go to a smaller town like El Paso. That bowl game means a lot to everyone in the community because it brings in a lot of money every year. And so it's neat when you go in. The airport's small and easy to navigate, and then you walk up to the stadium, and it's just neat. I love going to bowl games because you grow up watching them on TV, and then when you're finally there, you try to see if it matches up on site as it does in your mind when you get there. So I thought that was pretty sweet. But I love seeing the local communities, how big some of those games are for them.
It does mean a lot, and it's fun. I've been to, Super Bowls. I've been to, I went to the national championship last year, which is a dud for my Huskies. But the smaller places, went to San Antonio, watched the Final Four. And that was just pure fun.
I've never been to a Final Four. How sweet was that?
It's pretty special. It's another I had to check that. Rick Jones of Goldberg Jones, he's a big sports guy, so he's been to multiple Final Fours, and so we went, and I could check that off my list, but it's definitely something to put on your list.
Yeah, Rick's the guy to hang out with if you want to have a good time. He knows what's going on. Now, I don't think I told you this story, but last year, I hit up my buddy Steve, who also lives down in Vegas, and I know Rick's got a place down there, and we decided to go to the Sun Bowl. And this is before we knew who the matchup was going to be, so I went online and I bought tickets for us. About 50-yard line. They were like $60 a piece, right?
Oh, wow.
So cheap. Well, then it got announced who was going to be in. It was Oregon State and Notre Dame.
Oh,
and
nice.
I said, Steve, Notre Dame's in. And within 24 hours, they had bought up almost the entire
yeah.
stadium.
They travel.
And so I told him, I said, you know what we should do? I said, I can request press passes for us, and then I bet we can put those out there on the secondary
That's
market.
right. You can.
And I said, a good Catholic, devout Catholic Notre Dame fan will probably take care of us. And sure enough, I put them up, and within 48 hours, they sold for, let's just say, a lot more than what I purchased for.
Absolutely.
And that took care of our flight expenses down there to El Paso.
Yeah, that was like we all went down. We used to go to the Super Bowl, and then the Seahawks were their last Super Bowl they were in. We, Seahawks fan
Down in Arizona.
Down in Arizona. So the year before, we were in MetLife, went to that. But it used to be you could buy tickets secondhand, and they start at the worst seats about $2,500 to $5,000 per ticket, which is a lot.
Yes.
Because the face value is $800 to $1,000.
Yeah.
We went down. We flew down. We're going to buy secondhand tickets. We can always get tickets. You can always get tickets to any event. That year, the cheapest ticket up until game day was $9,800 for 400 level tickets.
Insanity.
And so we flew down there to go, and I said, I'm out. We sat and flew down to Phoenix and watched the game at a house.
Oh,
but
my goodness.
It's crazy what those costs are.
I was living and working in the Bay Area when the Broncos were last in the Super Bowl 50, which was at Levi Stadium. And I told my buddy Steve, I said, well, come out. You can stay with me, and then we'll wait until the very end to buy tickets, and then we'll go to the game. Because I thought, man, how many chances will I have to be able to see the Broncos in a Super Bowl? And I don't have to pay to fly anywhere, so I just got to buy a ticket. But the ticket prices, they didn't budge.
No.
And so I called my dad, and I said, Dad, should I go, or am I going to regret not going, or if I just watch the game at home, am I going to enjoy it? And he goes, if they win the Super Bowl, you're not going to care. But he goes, you don't want to spend $5,000 on a ticket. He goes, that's a little bit outrageous. So we didn't buy. But another working experience I had when I was working for a different station in town, when we went down for the week to cover Oregon and Auburn in the national championship game, me and my partner John Lund, we went down together. What the station did is they put us on this charter flight, which was a part of this group of Duck fans who had bought a package to, you fly down, you stay at a resort, and you go to the game and so forth. Well, because we were on the flight, we didn't know we were going to get this, but they ended up giving each of us a game ticket, right?
Oh, wow.
And of course, we had press passes. So I told him, I said, John, I don't think we're supposed to do this, but what should we do? And he was like, well, he goes, how much do you think we get? And we checked the secondary market. And I told him, I said, I think we can get around, $2,000 or just under per ticket.
You can't not do that.
Yeah. So what I did is there's another guy who, a ticket scalper here in town, he's a ticket broker. So I hit him up. His name's Dick. And he came over to our hotel room. And I knew what they were selling for. And he tried to lowball me at first. I said, Dick, you're trying to rob me blind. He goes, now you're robbing me blind. And we ended up getting like $2,000 per ticket.
Nice.
And we kept that between he and I for years. But it was like, that was the greatest week ever. It's like we got super paid to be down there covering the game when we had the press pass.
That is the way to do it. And that one, the $9,800, that it was a unique experience that year. That what ended up happening, the ticket agency that normally handles the transfer of these tickets, they oversold because they figured that they could buy the secondary tickets and sell them for $5.
Yeah.
And they couldn't. People flew down there and they had purchased and paid for their tickets, but they couldn't get their tickets, and so they got sued for millions because all these fans went down and they had paid. But anyway, it's a crazy business.
How nice was MetLife? I've never been there.
I liked MetLife. It was a weird experience because we stayed in New York, and they closed. This was back when they were worried about, after, all these threats, and so they closed down the New York tunnel, which I'd not been to New York before. That was a big deal. So you had to have a private company drive you there and park at the game and stay at the game. They had it all sorts of security. MetLife was great. It was 42 degrees. There was a snowstorm the next day, and we got almost snowed in. But it was a great evening. It's open air. It was a wonderful experience to go to, especially since
Was that your first time to New York?
It was my first time to New York. It was a great experience.
Oh, dude.
The pizza, the going out late, it was awesome.
I just went to New York for the first time just a few years ago, and I've been back twice since. I just went to a trip there. But I'll never forget when I first went there, I was to go see a concert, and I was meeting The Godfather out there. But I had a connecting flight in Philadelphia, and I'll never forget after I got in, I'd taken the red eye into Philly. But I'll never forget the short flight from Philly to New York when we came out of the clouds and I'm looking
Mhm.
over the skyline.
Yeah.
I mean, I've
It's
never
something
seen
else.
anything like it. It's like
It's crazy.
it looked
Never
like the
ends.
Emerald City. It kept
Never
going.
ends. Kind of get like going over L.A. You're just like, when is this going to end?
It
just-
doesn't end.
No, it doesn't end.
But New York, I have to admit, I went in thinking, who cares? New York, there are a bunch of arrogant clowns out there.
no.
You go there and you're like, no, that city's legit.
It is. It is a fun place to go. And everywhere you go, it's some kind of historic
Yeah.
monument. Just
I-
you turn a corner and you're right there.
I took a day when I went there in the summer for that baseball series of Dodgers and Yankees. I had a day where I used the subway and walked around the city a lot. And I ended up going to a dinner in Little Italy because Travis had recommended a spot down there. But I went through the financial district and Wall Street, and it was, and then I walked down to the water and looked out at the Statue of Liberty. And the whole day I was just blown away. And I ended up going up to the top of the Trade Center because they have that observatory up there.
Right.
And I took some great pictures, man.
Yep.
It was amazing.
Yep.
Blown away.
Yep. Agreed.
All right.
Agreed.
All right, my man. Oh wait, you have stats. Your futures
do.
bets, and it turned out pretty well for you.
It turned out good. Now, again, when we went at the beginning of the season, we talked about these futures. We also talked about not worrying about the juice on them, which
Yeah.
is good because I won 6 and lost 4, so that's
a good percentage, 60%.
And my favorite, as I'm mentioning, is the Vikings. I
Yeah.
said, oh yeah, J.J. McCarthy. There's no way, and their backup is Darnold. There's no way they're getting over 6.5 wins. So that was my favorite loss, under 6.5. Had the Bengals under 10.5, Steelers under 8.5, and obviously they did fine. And then Panthers under or over 5.5.
Hey, good call on the Bengals too.
Yeah. And then the wins, Cowboys, Lions, 49ers, Pats, Hawks, all over theirs, and then the Eagles win the division. So did okay.
That's
did
good.
okay on that. But there's other bets that brought me down.
All right, Colin Amos. He's with Goldberg Jones, 1-800-DIVORCE. He stops by every month to answer your questions. First question of the day for you, Colin. What is each party responsible for in a legal separation?
Yeah, a lot of people think a legal separation is something really as a stepping stone to a divorce, and it's really not. It's really akin to a divorce. So if you're filing a legal separation, whatever issues you have to deal with, custody, visitation, child support, property and debt division, spousal support, all gets handled in a legal separation just like a divorce. It's just at the end of the day, you're not even divorced. You still then have to pay me to convert the legal separation to a divorce. So I tell people, not kind of joking, either work on your marriage and figure it out, or separate if you want, but don't file anything until you figure that out, or file a divorce. So a legal separation is really not anything different.
All right, next question. Says, Colin, my girlfriend and I have split after 9 years. We have a 5-year-old daughter. What's the process for getting a parenting plan, and what happens if we don't get a plan in place?
If you don't get in place, chaos and pain occur because it's hard enough to make decisions when you're together for your kids and come to a consensus. But when you're separated, then you got new relationships, you got different jobs, opportunities coming up. If you don't have a good structured parenting plan put in place, it creates a lot of problems, certainly for yourself, but mainly for the child. So I tell people, if you're getting along when you're breaking up, file a case while you're amicable, get a parenting plan put in place, put in the details of when you have the child, when they have the child, deal with all the holidays, which I just survived with all the people messing with each other over Christmas and Hanukkah and all these other things. So put that in place, get it signed by a judge. Then in the future, if there's problems, you can hold that person accountable. So definitely get something put in place. And the more amicable, the more you can communicate, the better.
All right, the next question plays into parenting plans. What's the difference between parenting plans in Washington and Oregon?
The overall goal is exactly the same. You're trying to get a court-ordered structure that's detailed and that you can hold each other accountable, like I just mentioned. But there are different approaches in Washington and Oregon. They come to the same conclusions. They're trying to maximize time with both parents. They're not trying to take kids away from fathers or mothers. But they're just, I suppose the structure is just a little different how Oregon and Washington do it. But we're all trying to get to the same conclusion, a detailed parenting plan that outlines the holidays, the vacations, the school days, all of that, so that there's no confusion as to when you have your children.
All right, next question plays into parenting plans as well. Colin, do parenting plans spell out holiday schedules? How does that work?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, they should. So you can have an inadequate parenting plan, and that's what I tell people. Be careful. People like, we got this. It'll be fine, and I'll just put this structure in place, and we're going to always be best friends for life. And
That could be the worst phrase ever uttered by any man alive. I got this.
I got it. Don't worry about it. But yeah, you want to put in the details of the holidays because if you don't, if it says we'll divide up the holiday break from school equally, well, that's about a $10,000 retainer for me to tear down your bad parenting plan and define what that means. So usually, for example, we put in the day school gets out till 9 p.m. Christmas Eve and odd years, even years, 9 p.m. Christmas Eve to the day before school resumes. So all of that needs to be outlined. Then if you're getting along, great. You can put it in the drawer and never pull it out. But if you have problems, you pull it out and said, nope, I get them till 9 p.m. Christmas Eve. And then if they don't follow it, then you can hold them accountable through a contempt or an enforcement proceeding.
All right. 1-800-DIVORCE is the telephone number. Colin Amos from Goldberg Jones Divorce for Men says, Colin, my wife and I are in the process of divorce. She doesn't like my parents. Can she prevent our kids from spending time with them or traveling with me to see them?
This happens a lot more than you would think. Certainly there's parents, there's uncles, there's new girlfriends, and both parties, but probably mothers more so, try to overreach on that because they don't like their kids around certain people. But no, your time is your time. If you have a parenting plan and it's your weekend, you can bring the kids around whomever you want. The only time you can't is if there's a specific provision in that parenting plan that says this person, you cannot bring them around that. And the court won't allow any parent to control the other by putting that in there unless there's clear evidence that that individual you're trying to keep away has a history of putting the kids in harm's way.
Okay, that's good to know because I can see that being an issue all the time.
Yeah, I don't want them there at the pickups at the school. I don't want your girlfriend around those kids. I don't want your boyfriend around. So, yeah, so unless there's a specific provision, you should be okay.
We've gotten this before. I love this question. Colin, do you have any suggestions as to how I should ask my wife for a divorce?
That one, it seems so simple.
Yeah.
But it is tough. What I tell people, because attorneys are expensive, and I'm trying to save people money, contrary to what everybody believes. We're busy enough. I don't need to find ways to work on people's cases. So I'm trying to help them find a constructive way to get through this. First, have a consultation with a good attorney. The best thing I can do is educate individuals as to what their options are. But second, yeah, it's always better to try to have a conversation, even if you know it's going to go poorly. Have a conversation with your wife. Just say, hey, obviously we're not on the same page. This is what I'm thinking. Let's try to figure it out. It's not so great when the first time she figures out you want a divorce is when she gets served 50 pages worth of documents from your attorney.
Yeah.
And then she blows up, and it's even worse. Now, it might blow up otherwise, but at least give her the opportunity to do the right thing and be reasonable. So have, kind of, as we would say, man up and have that conversation as nicely as possible.
Exactly. That's why I encourage people to call you at 1-800-DIVORCE for the consultation, because you've told me, and I know people have reached out to you, that often you, just through the process of answering the questions in the consultation, they find out they don't need representation.
Yeah.
And
There's
you
a
point
lot of
them in
people
the right
that don't.
direction. Yeah.
Absolutely, because they just need to understand what they have to work through. And I can provide that structure. A consultation takes about an hour, and I can go through everything. The most complicated matters, I can get through in an hour and say, here's the structure. Then they can go and have more constructive discussions because guys, as we know, pop themselves in the foot all the time. They
Constantly.
say things they shouldn't. They do things they shouldn't. And then they piss their wife off.
Yeah.
And then they pay me a lot more money to try to fix it because I can't unshoot them. I can just bandage them up at $4.25 an hour, and that's expensive.
So just by being wise in your process and in your communication, you could prevent a lot of the hassle, meaning you can prevent the irritation that can lead to a long and drawn-out divorce process.
Yes, you can try to minimize that. Yes.
All right.
Minimize my expenses.
All right, final question for you. Colin, what is the best way to communicate with my spouse during the process of a divorce?
Yeah, similar to the last one. I always tell people, if you're going to text, you're going to email, you're going to leave a voice message, always imagine that the judge is sitting just above you, listening to or watching whatever you say or do, because Most people get a little carried away. Do not drunk text. don't get up, stay up late, come back and say something, because all that can be used against you. Be careful what you also put on the internet and your social media.
Yes, you pointed out social media can come back to haunt you.
That can very much come back to haunt you. So, but communicating with your spouse, I mean, even if she's trying to push your button or he's trying to push the button, my general response is, I'm sorry you feel that way. I don't feel that way about you. I hope we can be the best co-parents possible. I hope we can get through this. Whatever she says or he says, just say that, and just don't respond with, the tit for tat, because that's expensive to have two attorneys resolve that.
No doubt. Can you just feel your wife's eye roll when you say, honey, I got this?
All the time.
Yeah.
All the time. Same way when she says it, I'm like, okay, yeah. It just should not. It should be voided from the English language.
All right, Colin Amos, Goldberg Jones, Divorce for Men. As he just pointed out, the best thing to do if you're facing a divorce or a custody issue, call 1-800-DIVORCE, because Colin's going to answer any of your questions in a consultation at no charge, and then you'll know where you're at and what you need, and that's the best thing about it. 1-800-DIVORCE. You can check him out online at goldbergjones-or.com. All right, my friend, you've got a few more playoff games left.
That's right.
You've got the NFL playoffs coming up, so opportunities for you to go out there and make some cash.
I'm with you on all your favorite predictions. I think they're winners, but you got to beat the spread too.
You got to beat the spread. We spoke with Frank Schwab earlier. He loves the Chargers over the Texans this weekend. Yeah,
I'm a little heavy on them right now.
He kind of thinks it might be free money. Just jump on the Chargers.
It's investment. It's not gambling.
All right, buddy. I appreciate it, man.
All right,
awesome.
that's great.
All right, that's Colin Amos, who joins me every month. Law office of Goldberg Jones. Again, that number, if you're facing a divorce or custody issue, or if you're looking for a prenuptial agreement, 1-800-DIVORCE is a telephone number. Trailblazer Ticket Tuesday coming up at 5.
You are listening to the Rip City Drive with Chad Dewing, brought to you by Goldberg Jones. Divorce for Men, 1-800-DIVORCE.
All right, just got this text message from the 503. It says, I've been listening to you since you came back into the Rip City Drive from the Bay Area. And that call from Christina has to be one of the best moments I've heard. It was like seeing someone trip and trying to catch themselves from falling for like 5 seconds, knowing exactly what's coming. They're going to fall. Her call was like that. You could just see where it was going. And us, the listener, got to sit back in pure enjoyment as it culminated in her asking you to be her girlfriend on air. Pure gold. Yeah, I'm glad that you enjoy my discomfort on air. Michael Shacker thought it was terrific.
Yeah, you two would be a power couple of Portland. You two at Moda Center rooting on the Blazers.
I can assure you, based on my experience, that not just Christina, but I've managed to repel all females from my life.
But how many females have given you John Elway trading cards?
I think she might be the only one. That's a good point. And coffee, too. I've been looking in all the wrong places, I guess. Coffee and John Elway cards. And Barry Sanders, who, by the way, is the best college football player I've ever seen. Barry Sanders. And John Elway, my favorite. All right, Rip City Drive. We have tickets to give away coming up at 5 o'clock. This will be for the Miami Heat game coming up this weekend at Moda Center. And all you have to do is listen to me for your chance to win. Trailblazer Ticket Tuesday, courtesy of your Portland Trailblazers every Tuesday here on the Rip City Drive. We have tickets for every home game to give away. And, you know, honestly, I thought last night's game, one of the more enjoyable games that I've seen in quite some time, just due to the sheer shot making. I mean, teams were both sides. Detroit and Portland bombing away from downtown. Portland shot a high percentage last night and had 36. It was a very good game. Very good game. Exciting game. They lose it by 3, and now they're back at it tomorrow. They'll be taking on New Orleans, who is pretty beat up. And from what I can tell, Zion is fat. He might be fatter than normal, too. I'll never understand how the professional athlete who gets paid millions of dollars to perform a simple task of playing basketball, where you have a chance to make a king's ransom playing a kid's game, and how you can allow yourself to become fat and out of shape. The same thing with Joel Embiid. Does that guy work out? It's like, hey, Embiid, do you care about your conditioning? And again, when we're talking about pro athletes, it's not fat shaming. Your job, your number one priority in your job is literally to be in the best shape that you possibly can be in. And you get paid hundreds of millions of dollars to perform your job. And the problem with Zion that irritates me is that when healthy and not as fat, he is dynamic and explosive and fun to watch. But we're never going to see that guy because he can't not be fat. He can't get himself in shape. And then the problem is with an explosive player like that, when you're carrying extra LBs, you put more strain on your body, which puts you at a higher risk of injury, which is a big-time problem. So really, it's just kind of a waste of talent. It's very unfortunate to watch. And with Embiid, like, the same thing, man. The guy's unbelievable. But he's not in great shape, and you see him out there laboring around. It's like, what are you doing? I don't understand. It reminds me of, Baron Davis is one of my favorite players. Loved him, especially with the We Believe Warriors back in 2007. But Baron Davis had those weird years where he had times where he was fat, he had times where he was skinny, and the times where he was lean and mean, he was dominant. And then he had those awkward in-between years where he was transitioning from one phase to the other, and he was kind of in between. I don't get it. I mean, but seriously, Zion, what a waste of talent that is. All right, NFL playoffs coming up this weekend. And we got the college football playoff, the semifinal games. Everyone assumes Ohio State's going to win. One thing I do know about the roster is Ohio State, the most talented team. Texas probably right behind them. if you're just talking about sheer talent and makeup of the entire roster, Texas and Ohio State's right there at the top. A big fan of Sarkisian and really like the Texas defense right now, but it's their offense, right? It's Quinn Ewers. That's the question mark. Can he be dynamic? Can he do enough and not make the big mistake to give them a chance against Ohio State? Also fascinating that game's going to be played down in Dallas, where you're going to have just a severe amount of Longhorn fans there. So that's going to be a wild scene. I like Penn State to upset Notre Dame. Notre Dame's playing good football, and clearly Marcus Freeman's doing a heck of a job recruiting-wise. But so far, and we'll see how it plays out, but that pass rush, that front seven of Penn State, they're so good. I don't understand Notre Dame because they won that game against Georgia with 90 yards passing. I know one thing. They're going to need more from Riley Leonard than 90 yards passing to beat Penn State. I guess the part about Penn State that's been impressive over the last couple of games is their offense is becoming a little more dynamic. And Drew Aller's draft stock is rising with his play. I like their two-headed monster at running back. They've got the best tight end in the country, but their front seven on defense is nasty. I think both games are going to be terrific. And I'm a big fan of Marcus Freeman. He is recruiting differently. He's young, he's handsome, he's got energy, and that team's playing their tail off for him. So big fan of Marcus Freeman, and I think Penn State Notre Dame's going to be a terrific game. And with Ohio State now, I mean, I just don't like Ohio State fans, but I hate Texas, so I'm torn. I'm really torn on that. I'll have to pull for Ohio State because I grew up in Oklahoma, but I think Texas got a chance to pull off the upset there. And then I wonder if Ohio State loses that game, where's Buckeye fan going to be with Ryan Day? What would be the best matchup for the championship game? Would it be Notre Dame and Ohio State? Is that kind of where we're headed? All right, we'll keep things rolling. Your chance to win tickets for the Blazers and Heat coming up next with Trailblazer Ticket Tuesday. And then we'll focus in on those two matchups in the college football playoff and the semifinals coming up at 5:20 with Joe DeLeon here on the Rip City Drive. All right, Trailblazer Ticket Tuesday is coming up next on the Rip City Drive. Your chance to win a pair of tickets for the Heat and Trailblazers. All you have to do is listen to me for your chance to win. The Trailblazers took a loss last night in Detroit. They're back in action tomorrow, first of a back-to-back. They'll be in New Orleans to meet the Pelicans. Tip-off at 5. Chris Burkhardt will have game day starting at 3 on your home of the Blazers, 620 Rip City Radio. Ant had a game-high 36 points last night. From the NFL, the Raiders have fired head coach Antonio Pierce after one season, but they retain GM Tom Telesco. The Dolphins general manager Chris Greer says Tyreek Hill did not request a trade during his exit interview. And Vikings defensive coordinator Brian Flores says he will take every interview request. NFL wildcard weekend will kick off Saturday with a doubleheader, starting with the Chargers and Texans from Houston. That's a 1:30 kick on CBS. LA is favored by 3. And Sunday will feature a wildcard triple header.
You are listening to the Rip City Drive with Chad Dewing, brought to you by Goldberg Jones. Divorce for Men, 1-800-DIVORCE.
All right, I was having some issues trying to remember the title of this song, but it's Kiss Heaven on Fire. There's Shacker busting out some of the hits today. Joe DeLeon is coming up in 18 minutes to talk about the college football playoff. I just heard from my buddy Alex, who's a huge Notre Dame fan, and he's nervous about this game. Penn State, man, they're playing good football. I may have to retract some of the things I said about them during the season. And I thought they were kind of fraudulent throughout the course of the year because, you know, they didn't beat anybody, but they always beat the teams and rough up the teams they're supposed to beat. But in their big games, you know, they lose to Ohio State. They just have a hard time getting over. They lost to Oregon in the Big Ten title game. So I was suspect on them getting into the playoff. But here they are, and they're playing their best football at the right time of the season, as is Notre Dame. And my only issue with Notre Dame, I love their defense. They can run the football. They're very physical at the line of scrimmage. But their passing game throughout the year is, well, it's lacked a little bit of pizzazz, a little creativity. It's not their strong point. But when you get up against these better teams with legit defenses, especially at front seven like Penn State, you've got to have some type of success moving the ball through the air. You got to be able to move the chains, with the passing game at times. And so I just wonder if they're going to be able to have enough. So we'll see. But Drew Aller's playing good football right now. Their tight end Warren is a stud. Like, that's one of those guys, no matter wherever he goes or ends up, some team's going to be very happy. But that guy's got great hands, great route runner. And he's probably going to be a terrific NFL tight end. And what I'm wondering is with that, especially with 3 teams, so you got the Texans, the Giants, the Browns, all picking right up there at the top. Are we going to see both Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders be the first 2 picks taken? You know, we're hearing a lot of smoke screen right now. Like I heard the other day that there aren't a lot of first-round grades on Shedeur or Cam. I don't buy that about Shedeur for a second. I think Shedeur is going to be a great quarterback. Really like him, but the quarterback need, the desperate need for quarterbacks in the NFL is going to dictate those picks at the top. Travis Hunter, I guess I really love him too. What I'm trying to figure out is where he fits best. Is it corner? Is it receiver? Or is he going to be able to find a spot where they'll allow him to do both? And the question is, if you're going to do both, be a top-end receiver and a corner, how are you going to be able to have the time during the week and preparation week to be in the meetings and practice time? How does that all play out? My guess is the best thing to do because, a premium corner, an elite high-end corner, they're so valuable because you need to have someone that can be a shutdown guy. I think Hunter can do that. So maybe the best thing for Travis Hunter is just to be an elite corner and then find a team that will, write in put him in on offense in some packages. My thought is with a player like that, he's so multi-talented, you got to find different ways to get him on the field. Great story, though. All right, 503-248-0620 is your telephone number. It's Trailblazer Ticket Tuesday, as I've been telling you. And we'll play Name That Tune here. The Miami Heat are going to be in town this weekend. So your chance to go to the game. And your chance to go to the game on us. It's just like golf. There's nothing better than free golf. There's nothing better than free sporting events. So this is your chance to win. I'm going to play a little snippet of a song. And then all I need from you is the first person to give me the correct answer, name and artist of the song. We'll get 2 tickets to go check out the Heat and the Trailblazers at Moda Center. All right, so telephone number is 503-248-0620, 503-248-0620. First person with the correct answer, name and artist of this song. 503-248-0620. Name and artist of this song. 503-248-0620. It's Name That Tune here on the Rip City Drive. Trailblazer Ticket Tuesday. First person with the correct answer, 503-248-0620. 503-248-0620. Fire away with your phone calls. Name and artist of that song. First person with the correct answer. I can't do it. My voice. 503-248-0620. All right, so Trailblazers and Heat. Don't forget, every Tuesday throughout the course of the season, we will have Trailblazer Ticket Tuesday, your chance to win tickets to every Trailblazer game. And we do have tickets for every game, which is great. All right, I'll play it for you one more time. Name and artist of this song, 503-248-0620. I guess I can give you a little hint. This artist decided to leave the music industry and said, no, I'm done. I'm going to become a movie star. Let's go out to the 503. I think I've got Garrett. Hey, Garrett, what's up? Welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
I'm good, Chad. How are you?
I'm very well. Are you ready to play Name That Tune?
Yes, sir.
All right, here's the snippet. Take a listen. What's the name and artist of that song, Garrett?
It is Good Vibrations by Marky Mark and the Funky Bunch. Can't forget them.
That's right, the Funky Bunch. You don't want to disrespect them.
No way.
How about that, Shacker? Marky Mark's like, nah, I'm good. I'm going to go become a movie star. He just shut it down.
Genius.
A
decade later, they weren't even selling CDs.
All right, nice work, Garrett. That song takes me right back to the summer of '91.
Yes, it does.
All
nice
right.
junior high days.
That's right, buddy. All right, hey, Happy New Year. Shacker's going to get your information, and I'll see you at Moda Center this weekend.
All right, thanks, Chad.
There you go. There's Garrett getting it done. Who was I talking about that with? Was it Rich Patterson? I think it might have been the Captain Rich Patterson. We were talking about that the other day where, isn't it cool how you can hear a song and it takes you right back to a time and place? That happens to me all the time. You hear a song and right away it takes you to a place, a time and place, and it reminds you of something. It could be something like summertime. It could remind you of, a wintertime, a season. It can remind you of a person, maybe a past relationship. Maybe a bad time in your life, a good time, whatever the situation may be. But, man, songs are like that. It's powerful. But that takes me back to the summer of '91. Hanging out a lot with my buddy Corey. Yeah, so I worked, had my job at Red Robin. And we would spend a lot of time during the summertime, listening to music and driving around. He had a RX-7, which was sweet, with the rotary engine. We'd cruise around town. We'd go hit Sherry's late and hang out. Back when they used to have Sherry's. And drink coffee and stuff. That was cool. And that was also the summer where I took a trip down to California with my buddy Jeff. And that was a pretty sweet trip. We're down there for, a couple of weeks. Spent time on the beach. My favorite times, though, were we went to a baseball game, got to see the Angels and Yankees at the down in Anaheim. And we also went to Rams training camp. That was one of the coolest experiences I had because they had all these guys that I grew up watching, like Henry Ellard, Todd Light, who was a cornerback from Notre Dame. Marcus Dupree, Oklahoma running back, was in camp with the Rams. Like all these studs. And then back then, the security was different. I can't remember exactly where the Rams training camp was at, but they just had a little yellow rope. And then the players would come over during breaks and sign autographs. I met Jim Everett, and he was super cool. I remember I wore a David Robinson T-shirt. Remember back in the day, they had those basketball T-shirts that you could get at like Pro Image at the mall, where it was like a cartoon character. It was like I don't know what you call it. It was like a caricature of the basketball player. Well, I had one of David Robinson, and Jim Everett thought it was cool, and so I was pretty happy about that. And the other guy I met, too, I think he played in like 4 or 5 different decades. But remember Jackie Slater, a longtime tackle for the Rams? He was there. But this was after they had traded Eric Dickerson, so the Dick was not there. But I loved him. And he's still the guy who set the NFL rushing mark over 2,100 yards back in 1984. But those were good times. I think that's the only training camp I went to. I don't recall my dad ever taking me to the Broncos training camp. I think that's because back in the day, they did it out in Greeley, Colorado, which was a ways out of town. You know, now they do training camp in town right there at the facility. But I do remember that training camp. That was cool. So there you go. So Marky Mark and the Funky Bunch reminds me of that time period in my life. With the Trailblazers last night, I really enjoyed watching that game. Ant was on fire. And I'll say this about Ant. It's been pretty well documented, but he's had some struggles this year just in terms of the difficulties, being a part of a losing team for quite some seasons now. Struggled to make shots early in the year, but he's starting to pop out of it. And last night he caught fire, 36 points. I mean, he was 8 of 12 from downtown, so he was terrific. They're continuing to get great play from Deni Avdija and Tamani Kamara. Shaden Sharp is emerging. I'd love to see them get a few more minutes for Donovan Clingan. But what I'm finding most pleasure in right now is just the way that those young players are continuing to excel when they get an opportunity to play. Heck, even Chris Murray, the second-year player out of Iowa, he got like 27 minutes last night, but 11 points, 4 boards, 3 assists. He's known as Mr. Perfect because the coaches don't have to repeatedly tell him what to do. You teach him once, and he remembers it. So Chris Murray was effective last night, but I just like what I'm seeing with the young guys. And look, I know a lot of you are frustrated because, you want Billups gone, you're tired of losing. I get that. But Billups, this will be his final year in Portland. It was pretty cool to see him get honored last night in Detroit. First time back to Detroit since he was inducted into the Hall of Fame. So that was a special moment for him. The crazy part is I grew up admiring Billups, and I used to live in Denver. He's revered in Colorado. Like my family and friends in Colorado, they all love Billups. And, of course, he's revered in Detroit because he won a championship there. Basically, everywhere in the country, Billups is loved except for Portland. And it's not really his fault. He was hired by an unpopular GM, and then the focus of the franchise shifted after Olshey was fired, and they've decided to take the team and go young and rebuild. And so Billups got caught up in that. I just hope that Billups gets an opportunity to go somewhere in the future where he can have a more experienced group to see what he can do. But the young players right now, we're seeing growth from Shaden Sharp, Deni Avdija, Tamani Kamara, Donovan Clingan, and Scoot's been better over the last couple of weeks, which is nice. So that's a very good sign. And the Blazers are still progressing towards the lottery. And the draft is going to be loaded up this year. It's going to be an important year for the Blazers. All right, we'll come back. We'll focus in on the college football playoff with one of my favorite guys to talk to, Joe DeLeon, here on the Rip City Drive.
You are listening to the Rip City Drive with Chad Dewing, brought to you by Goldberg Jones. Divorce for Men, 1-800-DIVORCE.
All right, our next guest, he's on social at Joe DeLeon, a college football and NFL draft expert with Bleacher Report, and this guy knows it all. So we're going to bring him on right now. It's Joe DeLeon. Joe, thanks for coming back on the show, buddy. It's so great to catch up with you. You know, you and I are both big fans of Cam Skattebo and what the Arizona State Sun Devils were able to do this year. What did you think about that Peach Bowl and Cam Skattebo's college football finale?
I mean, I was a big Cam Skattebo fan, like you just mentioned, and I had high hopes for what he could do in that game. But, man, I don't think I could have predicted, or anybody could have predicted, the impact that he had on that game. He throws a touchdown. He has a long, important reception on the sideline, and he was everything for their whole offense, running the ball. I really like that kid just as a player, and he was somebody who – I caught his tape when he was at Sac State a few years ago, and I texted with buddies of mine and that are break down film like I do, and said, like, man, I really think that this kid could be special if given the opportunity, and at the very least in the NFL, he can be a productive second or third running back used in the right role, and we're starting to see that this is just a dude who is hard-nosed, who is going to fight, is going to scratch and claw for yards. He did that for his Arizona State team, despite them staring down a clear sign of defeat against Texas.
Yeah, I know.
That whole Arizona State team and that whole program, I think, is going to be taking a huge step forward under Kenny Dillingham.
Well, I just saw the numbers today. I mean, Joe, they're going to have like 17 to 18 starters returning. They've got 50-plus guys who are returning, and they didn't lose one single starter in the portal. I mean, that's – talk about Kenny Dillingham, youngest coach in, the FBS, getting it done.
Yeah, that's what's the craziest part about this is how young he is. It's in his second year that he was able to produce these results. And it's not just the fact that big reason why he got the job was because he was an offensive savant and the way that he was able to really kickstart that Oregon, team the way that they're playing right now with the offensive production in his first year. But he's also just a total vibes guy that knows how to rally the troops and get everybody to step in line and fight for the cause. You saw that from every single player. The guy I'm the most excited about, though, going forward is Sam Levitt. That dude can spin it. He is a great athlete. And like Skattebo, he's not going to have the same type of impact. But like Skattebo, he will do anything to keep a play alive. He will do anything to fight for extra yards. I wouldn't be shocked if we're not talking about him in a couple of years as a potential first-round pick.
Okay, I want to talk to you about that for a moment. I have a weird fascination with Arizona State football, and I saw him live 4 times this year. But I don't break down tape, and I'm not an expert like you, but when I watch Levitt, obviously we know he's got the feet and he can move around. But, with his, his throwing, he appears to be very accurate and throws with anticipation, and he's got, pretty good arm strength. How much do you think he can really develop over the next year and two in college?
Yeah, I'd be really curious to see like his overall progression, but the traits and the tools are there. I haven't dug in enough to like give a true evaluation of his arm strength, and that's always what's the driving conversation for if guys are worthy of going in the first round or not, or if they're going to be a day 2 pick that has upside to start. But what's so impressive, and sometimes guys this can end up going in the opposite direction and guys can regress. But what's so impressive that's impossible to find these days with young quarterbacks in college football and young quarterbacks in the NFL is decision-making and aggressive decision-making and knowing how to find and set up his receivers to succeed and to place them in situations where they can just keep moving the chains even though it feels like a play is dead. His improvisational skills are tremendous. His ability to evade pressure and to get away from defenders was great in that game, going up against one of the most successful pressure-producing defenses in college football with Texas. If he plays a little bit firmer from the pocket and we see some growth, some Bo Nix type growth, him being a first-round prospect is certainly on the table.
Hey, Joe, with Skattebo, and we've seen this with players before, he got 2 offers. I think it was Sacramento State and Holy Cross, which is just amazing to me for how good he became. Is that because he was one of those kids that was impacted by the COVID time where, with all the restrictions, that maybe there were kids around the country that got under-recruited because there were restrictions on how many, on the travel and the visits and all that? I mean, how does a guy like that slip through the cracks?
That has to be the case, and he's also coming from a relatively under-recruited part of the country. I believe he's actually from, the area of Sacramento that's not that far outside of where he played at Sacramento State. It's just not an area where I think a lot of recruiters go for prospects. It's kind of like how Josh Allen is from not too far from Fresno. It's not in the typical area where you're going to Los Angeles and you're recruiting that region with all of the tremendous high schools and coaches that are there, or you're going to Orange County, or you're going to San Diego because you know that talent's there. It's a little bit forgotten. It's one of the things that is under-talked about in a ways out west with the state of California is that there's just so much land. It's kind of hard to keep track of, all those guys. And I think what you brought up too, the timing of it as well, I think impacted his ability to get full exposure. The last part of that too, though, I think that he was also one of those prospects and recruits that needed a little bit more time and needed a little bit more, explosiveness and power added to his game. And he was able to do that in his final year at Sac State and was able to do that even further the past 2 years at Arizona State.
All right. No one would know this better than you, but, the Notre Dame squad we saw against Georgia, they look different, more speed and physicality. But what is Marcus Freeman doing differently that Brian Kelly did not?
I think the biggest thing is how aggressively and confidently he's coaching right now. And I think that one thing that we've talked about a lot with Notre Dame is he's a great recruiter, but does that translate, and does his lack of experience, how does that translate to him on the field? And a lot of times early on, and it was up until the NIU loss, which ended up being the biggest shifting moment for this Notre Dame program. Up until that point, he didn't really have that energy. He looked, overwhelmed at times on the sideline. Looked like he was really tight and stressed in situations, and his team was playing like that. And I think the way that we're seeing this Notre Dame team now, he is an extremely positively emotional piece on that sideline. That he is, like we just talked about with Kenny Dillingham, he's rallying those guys. He is rallying that team to play around him. As a recruiter, he was already doing that, but that aspect of him as a coach is starting to translate to what he is now on the field at Notre Dame. I think that just to answer that, though, about Brian Kelly, what is so clearly different, and a lot of LSU fans get frustrated by this because, they claim that Brian Kelly was a great recruiter at Notre Dame, but he needed LSU to be an even better recruiter. Marcus Freeman is great at identifying talent, and he's great at getting that talent to commit and to come play for Notre Dame. The recruiting levels have been at a tremendously high level for this team. And the depth, more importantly, is, I think, what's the most commendable because they've got so many young guys that are stepping up. So it all comes down to who he is as a person and the way that he's able to get the most out of his team.
Yeah, it's impressive. They're going to take on Penn State. Drew Aller, I like the way he's played over the last few weeks. Should he return to college for another year or go to the NFL?
Yeah, I think he needs to return. He is so physically gifted, and if he declares in 2026 and he's part of that draft class, he will get serious opportunities to be that first overall pick. But you watch his tape, he has the wow throws and the wow plays and his athleticism pops. But there are a lot of times on tape where his ball placement is erratic, his decision-making is erratic. He holds the ball too long at times. This is a kid who was a bit of a project. If anyone, I implore you to look up his throwing motion in high school and some of his training videos in high school that are out there. It was a process to get him where he is. The rapid growth has been really impressive. So I think he just needs one more year to really firm things up. And we're seeing in the NFL now, these guys that are projects, it's not worth the investment to jump in on the project if their impact can't be felt right away.
Hey, Joe, what do you think is going to be the key matchup in the Ohio State-Texas game?
Biggest matchup that I think is going to really swing in favor of Ohio State is Texas's run game versus Ohio State's defensive line. Texas has had a ton of problems running the football since the preseason injuries that they suffered at the position. Now, Trey Wisner's been great, and Jenna Blue has been, a spark plug for them. But the Arizona State game was a great example of that. The two matchups against Georgia were great examples of that, where they couldn't run the ball, and they were in positions, and they are actually playing good football offensively and defensively, but they were in positions where they needed to run down the clock and control the game, and they couldn't do it. They were forcing Quinn Ewers, those opposing teams were forcing Quinn Ewers to beat him through the air, and he was throwing too much. That's what led to turnovers in those games that allowed said opposing team to get back into it. The Arizona State game, that interception that he threw into double coverage, is a great example. So Ohio State's run defense that has been so dominant and that has been so downhill and aggressive, I think is going to be able to completely shut down that rushing attack, which will then set up a really talented secondary to get an interception or eventually maybe some sort of a strip sack on Quinn Ewers, who is extremely turnover prone.
What is your prediction for Quinn Ewers? Will he jump to the NFL, or do you think he'll come back to Texas or hit the portal and go elsewhere?
I think he's going to go to the NFL. I don't know if there's really much more that he can prove for how much football he's played. I think that the book is out on him, that he's very gifted. He's got a huge arm. Him going to the NFL is going to unlock and improve his decision-making. Another year of college football, I don't think is going to really do it, especially in an offense that is supposed to set him up to succeed as much as it has, and kind of tried to work away from those decision-making issues, but still have been very prominent. I'm not really totally buying. There's been some buzz that he might end up at Notre Dame. I'm not really buying that. It just doesn't make sense for Notre Dame's roster-building approaches and where they're trying to pivot towards away from going to the portal for quarterbacks. But it wouldn't shock me if he went back. It makes more sense for him to enter the draft in a year where the draft class is pretty weak.
Hey, with Tennessee, Cleveland, and the Giants picking 1, 2, 3 in the draft, do you think that Cam Ward and Shadur Sanders will both go in the top 3?
Absolutely. I would be shocked if we don't see at least, the two of them go in the top 3, because someone's going to trade up as soon as the first quarterback is picked. If those teams are not in that, if those 3 teams, if the Titans, if the Browns, or the Giants decide to pass, or one of those teams decide to pass, somebody will trade up to make the move, because this quarterback class is awful. It is not a good quarterback class. It really starts to dwindle when we start to talk about Jalen Milroe as maybe a first-rounder, but he has a ton of work that needs to go into developing him. And then we enter this pocket of Quinn Ewers, Carson Beck, Jackson Dart, who are really more so day 2 guys that could end up getting drafted somewhere in the first round because teams are so desperate. So because of that desperation and teams really badly needing to get their guy, and there being so many teams that feel like that they need to figure out who the quarterback is of their future, I really would doubt that both of those guys, Shadur Sanders and Cam Ward, make it past the 3rd overall pick.
We're talking with Joe Daly on Bleacher Report here on the Rip City Drive. Now, Oregon, there's no doubt that Dan Lanning's got this program on the right track, but I think what Duck fans want to know is, what is needed or required of Lanning and his crew to be able to get to that next level to where they can win a national championship?
Yeah, well, there's going to be a bit of a reset here, obviously, because of all the offensive players that are leaving and Dylan Gabriel going, and it's now starting from square one again at quarterback, assuming Dante Moore is the guy. I just think that where the real success is going to start to hit is the high school recruiting that he's done over the past couple of years. They have dominated. Dan Lanning has dominated very loudly, too. They have flipped a ton of guys late. They have pulled in. The last class was loaded with defensive line talent. This past class was loaded with secondary talent in anticipation of guys going on and graduating or going to the NFL. I think that for them to get to that next step is just having those 5 stars that have been there, that have been developing, step up and play to their potential. They have the roster. They have the recruiting to hit that stride and to play to, the degree of expectation that we're putting out for them. I don't think there's going to be a drop-off. I think that Dan Lanning has built a system that is designed to work for the long term. Just because they lost and they lost the way that they did to Ohio State, I don't think is a reflection on what they are as a program.
Hey, Joe, with Bo Nix, Jaden Daniels, Drake May, and Caleb Williams, what surprised you the most with their play out of that group in year 1?
Yeah, I think that what surprised me the most is that Drake May was able to step up as early as he did and to really start to show some signs of promise. And it's not that I didn't think that he couldn't be impactful as a rookie, but he didn't have any receivers. He did not have anyone to throw the ball to. That offensive line is awful for the Patriots. The fact that he was able to still show flashes on that team, I think, is like really speaking to how gifted of a prospect he is. A lot of people doubted him for some reason. I was not one of those people. I think that the ceiling is so high for Drake May. And the other part about that is that Caleb Williams, I think what's so surprising is that he had a pretty strong season. Statistically, he throws over 3,000 yards. You know, he doesn't have that same highlight play degree that he did at USC, but I think so few people, I don't think a lot of people really realize how long it takes for these guys to like really start to hit their stride. Jaden Daniels played a lot of college football. Bo Nix played a lot of college football. Michael Penix, who stepped in and played a little bit at the end of the year and made some big plays, played a ton of college football. The same cannot be said for Caleb Williams and Drake May, who declared as juniors.
Yeah, that's a great point. Speaking of Chicago, what type of coach do they need to hire? Like a Vrabel type that can really come in and build a culture, or should they go after the offensive guy like a Ben Johnson?
I think Ben Johnson should be the direction that they look because, you know, it always makes sense for a team to reset in the opposite direction of where they were last. They just had a defensive-minded coach with Eberflus. It makes sense for them to try and get somebody offensive-minded to help develop and grow Caleb Williams, and there's a really talented core of weapons on that team that need to be unlocked. And you can get that creativity from Ben Johnson to unlock all of those pieces. But I do like the idea of Mike Vrabel. I feel like his name hasn't really been brought up very much, but to have somebody to set the culture for a team that does need a hard-nosed leader in Chicago, it feels just right. And I think somebody does need to rein in Caleb Williams and kind of reset those expectations for what he needs to do. Vrabel could be that guy if they choose not to go with an offensive-minded coach like Ben Johnson.
All right, I just want to let you know, Joe, that when I got into the studio earlier today and I was, putting my thoughts together and I was scrolling through, listening to some different things, your comment about how Brian Daboll needs to become fat again because he was better as a fat coach and that Ozempic Daboll sucks, I spit coffee out on my computer screen because you had me chuckling so much. That is, I don't know what it is, but it's so true. Like any coach that we've seen that's gone from fat to skinny, they're never the same guy. It never works out. It's just amazing to me. But that was hilarious.
Well, and the funniest thing to think about with Daboll, and I'm a Giants fan, so my frustrations are real. They're not just me, yelling about Brian Daboll. He just kind of got a little lean, like he didn't get in like that crazy good shape. And I'm not trying to shame him here. Good for him for losing weight. And I don't even know if he was on Ozempic or not. It was just kind of a bit of a crazy shout there by me. But I don't know what had happened. I don't know what happened because that first year there was so much promise. And for him to get something out of Daniel Jones, just a little bit of production and a little bit of a bright light, for that to just disappear and fall apart so quickly, it's so crazy. He feels like he's a completely different coach. I kind of miss the version of him that was screaming on the sideline and was pissed off all the time.
I know. I was so ticked off. I wanted Shador to land in New York, so I was frustrated that they won that late game and taking him out of the top spot for the draft. Irritating.
Yeah, that was something for me, too, that I was really frustrated, again, being a Giants fan, that, like, they were in that spot. They play Indianapolis. They're not playing for anything. There is nothing. There's no reason for them to win. And, now that they kind of have to sit at 3 and hope, that the worst part about all this is the Patriots win and they fall further back, and the Giants don't have a trade partner. They don't have somebody that they could trade up with. Everyone ahead of them is possibly in the market for a quarterback, and there's uncertainty on what the Browns are going to do, but the Titans definitely are going to need a reset at quarterback. So Giants need to pray. If not, I guess it's Travis Hunter season, and next year maybe it's Arch Manning. But the cycle seemingly continues for the Giants.
Oh, my goodness. Well, Joe, man, I appreciate the time, buddy. It's going to be a great football weekend. Enjoy the college football playoff and the wild card weekend in the NFL.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, buddy. There's Joe DeLeon. The guy's a stud. Love talking ball with him. Ozempic Daboll sucks. All right, we'll keep things rolling here. Rip City Drive. Early Blazer game tomorrow, so no show. Chris Burkhardt will have game day at 3 o'clock. I'll have the Trailblazer pregame show at 4, tip-off against the Pelicans at 5 here on 620 Rip City Radio.
You are listening to the Rip City Drive with Chad Dewing, brought to you by Goldberg Jones. Divorce for Men, 1-800-DIVORCE.
All right, Shacker was telling me about the indoor golf challenge that's going on ESPN. I think it might be a Tiger Woods thing. Is that a Tiger Woods deal, Shacker?
Yeah, he owns it, and he's a competitor.
That's pretty awesome. All I can say is that the technology now with the game of golf is, well, it's awesome. My coach, Coach Nick, is out at Golf Tech, and so this time of year, aside from this upcoming week where there's going to be some sunshine, the weather out here sucks. So it's very difficult to get outdoors and play golf. I know people that play in the rain. That's not my cup of tea. What I try to do is jam in as many insane rounds of golf I can between mid-April and into September, early October. I just don't want to be out in the rain. I can do it when it's cold and dry, but I can't not cold and rainy. The rain just ruins everything for me. So what I've been doing the last few years to continue to work on my game is Golf Tech has got all that technology indoors with the trackers. And so I practice 3 days a week indoors. But what's amazing now is that they've got it set up where you've got your simulator in there. And so you're taking full swings and you're hitting into this wall in front of you, but you're hitting into a big screen. So it's like this massive projector screen that's in front of you, and you're whacking your balls into that, and the tracker picks it up. So it gives you, and you can see the flight of the ball, which is really sweet, but it gives you the distance, it gives you the spin rate, it gives you club head speed. My favorite is the data that gives you on your swing path, how many degrees inside to out, because that's ideally where I want my swing inside out, because I want to hit draws, push draws. So I love the data I get. And what the practice indoors, even though it's not exactly the same because you're hitting off the mat, you're not outdoors with the conditions. But during the wintertime, I can go indoors. I can get all my practice in, at Golf Tech where it's dry and I'm not freezing my balls off, and I can still continue to get the work in, which is great. And now they've continued to update the computer program. So now I can play simulated rounds indoors at heck, even golf courses that are here in the Portland area. You can pull up different golf courses. You can play a full round. It doesn't take that long to play a simulated round, and you can still get your practice in. Like tonight, I'm going to go practice. What I like is they've got these different chipping. I'm going to practice my 60-yard chips tonight with my 60 degree. But they have all these different programs you can set up, so I can select the type of green I want. You can hit over obstacles, over water, whatever you want. You can set it up however you want, and then you can get your practice in. So the technology is phenomenal now. But, Tiger Woods it jumped in that direction too, where he's got this, indoor challenge going. But I'm just blown away by the technology, especially with all the data that you can get back. And the other cool thing is they've got a camera set up there indoors for me. So I just tap a little button with my club before every swing, and it records every swing, so I can go back and take a look at, the swing from different angles. I can see if I'm keeping my head in the right position, my hips, and my, any sway, on my takeaway. I can look at the swing path and know if I'm getting, the type of, swing path that I want, how many degrees inside out. But yeah, it's amazing to me. It's amazing. But the most important part about the indoor practice, when you live in a place like this, is that then when the new season comes around, instead of the golf club feeling like a foreign object in your hand, because I've been getting the practice year round, then I'm just picking up, right where I left off. But most importantly, hopefully, making progress because of the practice time that's been put in. But that's what they got going on, which is pretty sweet. All right, so big football weekend. This is one of the best weekends in all of football with the postseason. Saturday, 1:30 on CBS, Chargers at the Texans. Right now, LA is favored by 3. I like the Chargers in this game. I think their defense will lead the way. And the reason why is because they're going to be able to get pressure on C.J. Stroud. He's been battered this year. Their offensive line is playing horrific football. and I think they'll be able to get enough pressure on Stroud to be able to win the game. At least I would think. Herbert's been very efficient this year, 23 touchdowns and 3 picks. I think it'll be a close game, but I like the Chargers to be able to get the win. With the Steelers at the Ravens, I think the 10 points is probably a bit steep there, especially for a division rival. These two teams know each other extremely well. The Steelers have struggled over the last month of the football season, but I would expect them to be able to come up with a good enough defensive game plan to where they'll be able to keep it close. I think the Ravens by about 7 points sounds about right, but I do expect the Ravens to advance. And the Ravens are one of the 5 teams that I think have a legit chance to win a Super Bowl. The 5 teams I would say are Detroit, Philly, Kansas City, Buffalo, and Baltimore. Those are your 5 teams. Of all the teams in the playoffs, I think those 5 are the 5 that have a legit chance to win a championship. On Sunday, it's a triple header, starting with the Broncos at the Bills. Denver, a surprise team this year. They were projected to win 5.5. They won 10 games. Bo Nix, 29 touchdowns passing, 12 interceptions. He was sacked only 23 times. Very efficient. Obviously, the most exciting part for Denver is they found their quarterback in Bo Nix. Buffalo is a force right now. They finished the season with 13 wins. I don't think Denver has any chance to win the game. Sad to say it, but I just think they're going to get throttled. I just think Buffalo's too powerful. And I think Bo Nix will, as you would expect from a rookie, I think he'll struggle a bit on the road in Buffalo. 1:30 on Fox Sunday, Packers at the Eagles. I like Philadelphia. They're favored by 4.5. I just think Philadelphia is a complete football team. They've got Saquon Barkley, Jalen Hurts, arguably the best roster in football. I expect them to make the NFC Championship game and meet up against Detroit. Sunday night, Commanders at the Bucks. I like Tampa Bay, but that should be an exciting football game. Jaden Daniels is so much fun to watch. But Tampa Bay, with their defense, I think they're going to be able to get enough pressure on Jaden Daniels. I expect them to force a turnover or 2, and I like the Bucks to win that game. And we don't talk about it, but Baker Mayfield finished the year with more touchdown passes than anyone. He's matured. He's playing great football. And Tampa Bay is just an underrated good football team. There's no question about it. One game on Monday, Monday Night Football 5, ESPN. It's going to be the Vikings at 14-3, traveling on the road because they play in the same division as the Lions, taking on the Rams. Right now, Minnesota favored by 1.5. Minnesota should be able to scratch out a win, assuming that they don't have any lingering effects from getting throttled on Sunday night. I was so impressed with Aaron Glenn and the defensive game plan they put together. Detroit showed up ready to roll. Minnesota, I think, was shocked by the intensity level and the way that Detroit came after them. All right, that's going to do it for us. Big thanks to Colin Amos from Goldberg Jones, Joe DeLeon from Bleacher Report, and Frank Schwab of Yahoo Sports for joining the show. Big thanks to Michael Shacker. And I appreciate your time. Tomorrow, early Blazer game. Chris Burkhardt will have Blazers game day at 3, and then tip off with the Pelicans and Trailblazers at 5 here on 620 Rip City Radio. Have a good night.